something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6. I am here, of course, for the duration, 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory, all the way through until 10 o'clock. And we've got plenty of stories to get on with today. You might think we're starting to get into the sort of slightly dog days of summer. Not quite, but it feels like that because the weather's been so nice. So you're walking around going, maybe I'll put the shorts on today. What do you think? Should I do that? Don't go to work in them, though, whatever you do. And, you know, people are sitting around enjoying themselves in the sunshine. You see people lying around in parks. You see people drinking and eating out in the open air. It's lovely. It's nice. It gives you a kind of a feeling of serenity and general goodness, which has been sadly lacking for such a long time. And then, of course, you turn your sights to Westminster and then you see Keir Starmer and you go, oh, dear, he's still here. Still here, Keir, I'm going to start calling him, because one day we're going to be able to come on this show and go, that's it, he's gone. He's finally gone. Today, guess where he's going? He's going to Albania, because he's decided that it's quite a good idea to have a third country to send migrants to. And maybe, just maybe, it could be Albania. And of course, he could have had that option, if he wanted to send people to Rwanda. But as soon as he got in, the first thing he did as Prime Minister was to ditch that deal. So now he's going to be having deportation talks with the Prime Minister of Albania. Remember that really tall guy who made Rishi Sunak look really, really small last time he came from Downing Street? Remember that picture? We'll try and find it and show it to you. Anyway, so that's going on. We've also got, of course, the prisons crisis, because, you know, it can't be another day without yet another crisis. So today's crisis is prisons. Shabana Mahmood yesterday got up in Parliament and said, we're going to run out of room. In fact, we haven't really got any room now, so we're just going to have to let a load more prisoners out. And according to some of the front pages this morning, it's going to be more bad news, of course, for us, because sex offenders are going to be let out. Soft on criminals is what it says on the front page of the Daily Mail. Their pitiful soft justice measures are going to end up with people who get recalled to prison only being recalled for a very, very short time before they get released yet again. Freed lags can be kept behind bars for the rest of their sentence if they're recalled at the moment, but they're going to change all that so they only get recalled for about a month. and everybody's very worried about who exactly is going to be coming out. You might remember the last time they did this. We had all these lags coming out with bottles of champagne, Lamborghinis picking them up, drug dealers having great times. Absolutely extraordinary scenes. So we'll be talking about all of that as well. Also, Starmer's surrender. Kerry Badenoch's written a piece for The Sun this morning. We'll be talking about that because he's having an EU summit next week. And, of course, during that, he's going to be giving up more fishing rights, and he's also going to be promising more rights for young Europeans to come here. And the EU are saying, well, we want more than that. We want young Europeans to be able to come here and pay less for university fees. Absolutely brilliant. Meghan Markle's popularity has hit an all-time low. That's good. Gary Lineker has finally apologised for his anti-Semitic post. People are still calling for him to be sacked by the BBC. And, of course, David Lammy. I don't know what's going on with David Lammy, but he took a very strange taxi ride from Italy to France, all the way through the Alps, which cost a load of money. The taxi driver ended up running off with his luggage. I don't know what's going on. We'll check it out. Emma Wolf is here as well. Good morning to you, Emma. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And as if you've forgotten how to get in touch, which I'm sure you haven't, have a listen to this.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn.
Morning, Mike. Great show. I'm going to put me down for one of them bumper stickers.
Morning, Mike. Pete from Lincolnshire.
Morning, Mike. It's Kate from Leeds.
Good morning, Mike. I've just applied for my bumper sticker.
I love your show every morning.
Great show.
Great show.
Great show as always, buddy.
Keep up the great work, everyone.
Yes, a very good morning to you, and very good morning to Emma Wolf. Haven't seen you for a while, so welcome to the home of common sense once again. I suppose we should kick off with this early release for sex offenders, which is on the front page of the Times. We've been through this once before, back end of last summer, wasn't it, when they decided to let loads of lags out.
Guess what?
Yeah,
we're 99% full again.
Right.
Uh-oh, what do we do?
Yeah.
No planning. No. Oh, someone calls them from a prison and says we can't take any more.
It's beginning to sound like the NHS crisis, this, isn't it? You know, like every winter.
Yes.
Oh, we go to 24 hours to save the NHS. It's now going to be every month. Oh, there's another prison crisis.
Well, I mean, there are no plans for how to rehabilitate people, how to reintegrate them. You just kind of release them.
Right.
Then they run around causing absolute chaos, and then they're recalled to prison.
Yeah.
This thing about Shabana Mahmood panicking and basically saying we're heading for a total breakdown of law and order. So we're going to release domestic abuse and sexual offenders, but we're not going to release anyone too dangerous.
Right.
Well,
and
actually, to a lot of victims, those people are extremely dangerous.
Exactly. And do you remember last time they did that? There were women who had been sexually assaulted or abused.
Ex-partners are basically on the scene again.
Right, and they weren't even told about it.
They weren't told, and much earlier than was planned, without any kind of proper rehab. And also, Mike, the chaos of people like that, domestic abusers, sexual offenders, being released and then recalled. You know, A, how much is all that costing? B, it doesn't solve the overcrowding problem. We are not solving it.
No.
I saw something in the papers yesterday about, we're going to build 3 new jails. I don't know whether that was just more pie in the sky.
They probably just said that,
but
they're not in the act of actually building them, so knowing how
What about using the massive, empty, pointless hospitals that we built during the COVID era?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, really.
Right. Well, there's any number of places they could use. There's any number of places around the country they could actually find
probably
space
use the BB Stockholm.
Well, exactly, but here's the thing. The reason that it didn't work last time was because they couldn't tag enough people, because the system for tagging doesn't work very well. So probation is under massive pressure. So if they let all these people out, they won't be properly tagged. Nobody will know what they're doing. If they do get recalled, they'll just get recalled, as you say, for 28 days now, for a shorter period of time.
And they know that. They know that. They can make contact. A friend of mine who works in probation service says it's absolute chaos that people are not properly monitored. As you say, probably not tagged properly, but not properly monitored, checked in on after they're released.
No.
So, I mean, what is going on here? And then we have prison guards. I mean, someone had their throat slashed yesterday.
That's it.
So there is absolute we already have lawlessness within prisons.
Yeah.
And for many of us in Britain nowadays, you look around and, you know, the shoplifting, just to name, but if you know, or the fact that if your home is burgled, police don't really seem to care unless you're a showbiz celebrity who's had, you know, £7 million worth of jewels taken from your hotel room, or your suitcase stolen at St Pancras.
Unless you've written something down on, you know, social media, in which case you get loads of police to come around. But no, the problem here, I think, as well,
but it already feels like this total breakdown in law and order for those of us living in this country.
Right. But the problem is that you can't solve the prison law and order problem by letting the people out of prison who are committing the violent crime in the prison, which just seems to be what Shabana Mahmood wants to do, because it turns out that the Victims and Crime Commissioner, which is Baroness Newlove, says victims will understandably feel unnerved and bewildered by today's announcement. This cohort will either have committed sexual or violent offences or been assessed as posing an unacceptable risk of harm to the public. So why are they letting them out?
It's absolutely nonsensical, and it's another kind of, wishful thinking plan for Labour that has not been thought through.
Yeah, but
and,
it's another civil service. You can tell it's a civil service plan, written by people who are too young to have ever probably been inside a prison and see what it actually looks like, and telling people how we should run things.
That's key, though, isn't it? Understanding how the justice system works, understanding what it's like inside prisons. People like sort of Peter Blexley, who actually kind of know what crime is about.
Right.
I don't think
and
these
what
people
criminals
do.
are like.
What criminals are like, what it's like to be a prison guard, and having your throat slashed, and that kind of, that kind of climate. And I mean, Shabana Mahmood, what experience does she have?
Yeah, I know.
With the best will in the world, I don't think she has a plan on this.
Yeah.
And also, Mike, it doesn't, exactly as you say, it doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah.
We're still going to have more criminals who need to be put somewhere.
Yes, and think of the criminals that are not actually being sent to prison because there's no space for them.
Because there's a lot of them that are not being sent to prison, and they're out on the streets.
And they know that, right? And so they don't stop committing crime because
there is no deterrent.
People say you have to commit at least 30 to 35 crimes before you even get to prison. So you're already a pretty serious criminal because first offenders don't get sent to prison, and second, third, fourth, fifth offences, no chance. But you have to be a recidivist criminal to even go anywhere near it. So
it beggars belief.
Yeah.
And again, as you say, there's no deterrent. It's a bit like immigration in this country. There's no deterrent.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you cross over? Why wouldn't you come here on a small boat?
And then you see stories like this about another female prison guard who had sex with a rapist up to 40 times whilst on duty. She's avoided jail. There's something very odd going on with prison guards at the moment. First of all, why have you got women prison guards in a men's prison? I mean, it doesn't sound like a great idea to me. Surely that shouldn't be possible.
Exactly.
This woman's called Sherry Ann Austin Sadlington, lots of names, 29. She became besotted with a very exceptionally dangerous sex offender called Bradley Trengrove after he was moved to HMP The Verne in Portland, Dorset. The pair embarked on a 6-month relationship and had sex in workshops while nobody was around. It's a prison. How's nobody around? How have they not got CCTV? How are you able to have sex in a workshop, which you shouldn't even have?
There should be an absolute ban on relationships between prison guards and prison.
Well, there shouldn't be women in men's prisons.
No, of course there shouldn't.
I mean, just call me old-fashioned.
No.
I
completely agree with you on that. But I also don't have. I don't know how this kind of thing can go on for 6 months.
Yeah.
And criminals, I mean, they're not being punished. They're having relationships.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're having a great time. Well, do you remember that there's been all sorts of footage of people smoking, drinking, having parties,
I don't even know
music.
how that stuff gets into prisons. There's a real problem with security, with just monitoring, with what's going on between the guards and the criminals.
Yeah.
I mean, if she's having sex with him, is she also helping stuff to be brought in?
Well, you would imagine so.
Well, there you go.
I think that's
mobile phones and drugs.
And I think that's part of the whole problem that's going on. And all these women who are relatively attractive-looking women going into the prison business, they must be doing it for a reason.
Exactly.
And this is probably the reason. Let's have a look at what Shabana Mahmood had to say. This is the Minister for Justice.
While the spending review is ongoing, I can announce today that the Treasury will fund our prison expansion plans in full across the spending review period. This is a total capital investment of £4.7 billion. It allows us to start building 3 new prisons, including breaking ground on a site near HMP Gartree later this year. This investment will also fund new cells at existing prisons, with new house blocks and rapid deployment cells opened across the country.
It all sounds like gobbledygook, doesn't it? All they can tell you.
Rapid deployment cells being suddenly found. Where? I thought you were 99% full.
Right.
It's okay.
It was like that Angela Rayner conversation about the housing.
Yeah.
Well, where are all these immigrants going to stay when they come here? Oh, well, there's plenty of houses. Well, hang on, you just said there aren't plenty of houses.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there's not plenty of those kind of houses.
No, they're not houses for British people.
It's like how many, we haven't got enough prison spaces. Oh, but we've got some other prison spaces
we
that
have.
we can have.
And we've got rapid deployment cells.
Yeah.
And do you remember when Keir Starmer said, we've got this amazing border force, and he called it something really amazing? I've never heard anything more of it.
No. Well,
it was something like...
is now really good at delivering people into Dover.
Yeah,
that's basically what they're good at.
And then escorting them through.
The day that he made his speech about immigration on Monday, 7 boats,
I know.
7 border force boats.
Beautiful day. They came sailing in.
Straight in. It was absolutely incredible.
And they were escorted into Britain. They're practically given flags as, a welcome passport.
And now we've got Starmer going off to meet the Albanian Prime Minister, Edi Rama, in Tirana today. So he's going to head over there to find shared solutions to the problem of illegal immigration. Well, first of all, they still haven't done anything about it. We've got 12,000 foreign criminals in our prisons. About 9.5 to 10,000.
And a lot of those are Albanians.
Are Albanians. Here's what I would suggest you do, Mr. Starmer, is put the 10,000 Albanians, you know, basically on a load of coaches, and you can take them with you to Albania and go, here you go, you can have these lot back. And then suddenly you've got 10,000 spaces.
Albania is actually a really good example. I know there are many other criminals, but why are we not just sending that lot back?
Well, he keeps saying they're going to.
Albania is a safe country.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a particularly nice country. I've been there, and
it
it's
is now that all the gangsters have left.
criminally
Come to work in London.
yeah, it's riddled with bullets. The whole place is a bit of a nightmare. I thought Tirana was one of the most unpleasant and crime-ridden places I've never. Oh, don't. And actually, Starmer, why doesn't he stay there? Because it's a horrible place. I've got no kind of fond feelings about Albania, but it is a safe country. They can't pretend that they're here for reasons of asylum or they're fleeing war or anything.
Well, especially if they're in prison.
Why have we never been strict to just send them back to Albania?
Yeah.
And also, I think this trip to Albania, I mean, Starmer's looking so desperate. He's literally out of ideas now.
He really is.
Because the Albania deal is going nowhere. Already, Giorgia Meloni's been trying to do a deal with Albania, and that hasn't really worked. And if she can't do a deal with Albania... But he loves going there, doesn't he? Starmer doesn't host people here. He just loves escaping Downing Street and getting out of the UK because he's so unwelcome.
He likes a summit in Downing Street. He likes if he's getting more than sort of 10 different world leaders coming in. That's always good. He likes to mix it and match it with the old.
But I've noticed he does more getting on planes and going somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, particularly what he would regard as probably the two-tier countries, and I'm sorry to mention two-tier to two-tier Kier, but what you might call, not the big countries of Europe like Spain, Germany, Italy, France, Belgium. He likes to go to places like Albania because he thinks they'll treat him like a sort of mini celebrity because he's from a big country in Europe. So they're talking about having hubs to send people, third countries, mind you, like Rwanda was a third country. Only this will be Albania, Serbia, Bosnia, and North Macedonia. Any deal would require Britain to pay for each failed asylum seeker relocated.
So each one.
So for each person we send to any one of these hubs, we have to pay them to go.
Even though they're Albanian, we can't just send them back. Or they're Macedonian, we can't just send them back.
Yeah.
And do you remember this thing about paying £3,000 to encourage people to...
Yes, which is what he's done already. Which is how he managed
per person.
It's how he managed to get the 24,000 deported back in sort of November, which he keeps going on about as if that's such a big deal.
Job done.
He hasn't deported anybody else since then, right? So if you have to pay people to leave, you're not really deporting them. They're voluntarily going.
What is there to discuss with this Eddie Rama guy? Here are your criminals. They committed crimes either in this country or in Albania. Have them back.
Exactly.
They're not our problem.
Yeah.
What is the problem?
I guess what he's going to go there and do is say, look, not only can you take some Albanian criminals back, but you can take some other people back who are not from Albania, and we'll pay you to look after them. Because even though it sounds like a terrible deal for Britain, which it is, it's still cheaper than us housing them in hotels and homes in this country.
Oh, no, I'd be happy for him to do that, Mike. I just really, really doubt this will add up to a row of beans.
Of course it won't.
Nothing will come of this. And as you say, the first thing he did was to cancel Rwanda. And I was very critical of Rwanda, and I thought it was a bit of a rubbish deal and very, very expensive.
Yeah.
But at least follow through after we paid all that money. Just carry on with Rwanda, for goodness sake. Now
he might as well have.
He had no replacement plan.
He really didn't. He will announce today, says The Times, that Britain will supply drones and share intelligence with North Macedonia and Montenegro in an effort to cripple the people smugglers. However, ministers acknowledge that the government will need to develop policies to deter people from making the crossings. Oh, really? You think? And also, I've been to Montenegro, and one of the days that I was in Montenegro, it was a big holiday weekend, and suddenly there was a lot more traffic, and suddenly all the cars that were coming through the part of Montenegro that I was in, they all had Albanian plates on, and some of them had German plates and English plates, and they were lovely cars, all very top of the range, BMWs, Mercedes and all that. And I asked a guy that I was with, I said, why are all these cars coming in from Europe? He said, oh, they're all Albanians.
Yeah.
But they've got these cars in the countries they live in, i.e. England, Britain, France, Spain, because the network of Albanian drug smuggling is massive in Europe, right? And people smuggling.
That was when I went to Albania. I was in Montenegro and we drove just over the border into Tirana. And it's absolutely, I mean, the Albanian criminals are all over Europe.
Yeah.
But I don't understand. So we're going to be doing more of this problems with security, sharing information, paying people to take them. This is not the plan.
Right. This is all part of his plan to smash the smuggling gangs, by the way.
Well, you can say it better than he can.
Smuggling guns.
I call him Enoch Starmer now. I think that would really annoy him. I think that would really annoy him.
I'm sure it would really annoy him. That's still going on as well. There's a lot of reverberation.
Yeah, of course. Labour MP's not happy.
Labour MP's not happy. I'll tell you what, we've got a clip to show you from Prime Minister's questions yesterday as well, where you know, Angela Rayner was clearly very not happy with something that Keir Starmer said. Emma Wolf is here, I'm here, we're here till 10 o'clock, of course. This is Morning Glory. We'll be back after this.
We know that over the past 3 years he's been on countless foreign jet-setting luxury trips around the world at our expense. He says it's to, you know, foster relations with foreign countries and to tell them how wrong Russia was to invade Ukraine. I'm not sure what that has got to do with the Speaker, but there you are. Yeah, he spent about £300,000 over the last 3 years going on these luxury trips.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:22. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until not until 6 o'clock, until 10 o'clock. What am I talking about? It's the Home of Common Sense. Yesterday, Prime Minister's Questions, Keir Starmer was given a hard time, of course, you would expect from all sorts of MPs, and one particular Plaid Cymru MP, which we'll get to in a minute. But let's have a look at what he had to say about the arson attack, of course, that was made on his home just a couple of weeks ago.
Can I thank her for her words about the attacks on me and my family, and the kind messages from many others in the last few days. She did actually message me pretty well straight away, and I really do appreciate that. And she's absolutely right that this is an attack on all of us, on democracy and the values that we stand for.
I was asking the question yesterday about the arson attack. Why are we not being told what the nationality of this individual is who's made the attack? The police yesterday applied for an extension in order to question him, 21-year-old who supposedly has a grudge against Keir Starmer. But, you know, wouldn't it be unusual if it turns out that he's some kind of asylum seeker or some kind of foreign agent? Because yesterday the Daily Telegraph said that there might be a foreign hostile state involved. Could be somebody who's Iranian. We've seen that Iranian terrorists operating, you know, before this. So we're still an awful lot of questions around that particular situation.
It's very weird, and it seems to be someone who knows his life, Starmer's life, quite intimately. He also targeted a car that was previously owned by Starmer. Not only his home, his former flat in Islington,
a flat that most people didn't know about. That he had.
I knew about the house in Kentish Town. But I didn't know about the former flat that he had had lived in.
I think had lived in with the previous partners quite a long time ago, you would imagine.
It does seem that someone had a lot of access to information about him. It isn't just random
No.
You know, or I mean,
it's not just I've seen Keir Starmer's house on the telly. I'm going to go and chuck
or
a
I've seen that
firebomb
politician
at it.
coming out of their house. Exactly. It's quite a detailed knowledge of his past.
It really is.
So it's a lot of questions that we're not being told.
A lot of questions. We'll come back to Prime Minister's questions in a moment, because let's have a look now at Donald Trump, because there's been an amazing sort of 24 hours for Donald Trump, who flew into Saudi Arabia. It seems just like yesterday, but of course he did have the meeting with Mohammed bin Salman. He then met the leader of Syria, who's a former Al-Qaeda terrorist operative, who's still, by the way, treated, I believe, and prescribed as a terrorist in the United States of America. But Trump actually had a picture with him in Saudi Arabia. And then he went to Qatar, who have obviously offered him all sorts of things, including a brand new spanking $600 million plane, you know, which it turns out is not actually a state gift, it's a gift from one of the emirs. But let's have a look at him embracing the heritage of the Middle East. This is him speaking last night.
The transformations have been unbelievably remarkable. Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that. The birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it themselves. Peace, prosperity, and progress ultimately came not from a radical rejection of your heritage, but rather from embracing your national traditions and embracing that same heritage that you love so dearly.
I mean, he clearly thinks that this is a very important part of the history of the world, you know, to forge some kind of alliance with these emerging nations. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to call them emerging nations, but they're sort of emerging superpowers, you might want to call them. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, because of all the money they've got. You know, it's quite an incredible scene.
It is. I actually find it really refreshing, and I know some of them one's politics. You know, there is distasteful stuff there, and I know that if we get into the detail, yes, we shouldn't be talking to this person, that person. But I wish we had a leader who was out there talking, you know, talking about peace and prosperity and progress, actually making some deals for our country. Because when you look at Trump, and it's interesting that Elon Musk was with him after all that nonsense about the big fallout and they were never going to speak again and all of that. I mean, to me, if I was an American, I would feel reassured. And then you don't get peace with these emerging countries. You don't get peace in the Middle East unless you have good relationships across the Middle East. And Trump knows what he's doing.
I mean, the problem for Qatar, I suppose, is that they have got this Hamas connection. An awful lot of the Hamas leaders and a lot of the money that funnels into Hamas via Iran comes into Qatar. And in fact, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, you know, are not very friendly towards each other. So, I mean, the fact that Trump's seeing both of them maybe is a good thing, and maybe is a good thing for the whole region. But certainly there are a lot of question marks about Qatar and its role in what's going on in Gaza.
Yes, there are question marks, and that's what I mean. It's, you know, you can't agree with everything, but I feel that at least Trump is acting more as a bridge builder and having talks with everybody than just
when you think of the
standing on the sidelines and waving flags as we do in this country and going on marches.
When you think of the last president, Biden, and there's a new book out. There's a new book out which says basically Jill Biden was running the White House, which I think we all kind of knew, but it's now been written down in black and white.
One of the most powerful first ladies in history, but really the extent of what she was doing, the extent of how much he was being propped up, effectively.
But the fact is, it's that he was doing so little. Because she was spending all of her time trying to convince everyone that he was fine and that his cognitive faculties were absolutely intact and he could make any decision that he wanted. So nothing was done. I mean, I think I remember him vaguely going to Saudi Arabia and the Crown Prince didn't even meet him.
Well, that's the thing. When you compare what Trump could get done in a day or in a week with Biden, and you just hear nothing day after day, week, month after month from the White House, nothing was happening. And you look at Trump's, first 3 months in office, he does an astonishing amount and he's getting things done.
He is getting things done. Here he is talking about US policy in the Middle East.
In recent years, far too many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it's our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders and use U.S. policy to dispense justice for their sins. They loved using our very powerful military, and now it's really the most powerful it's ever been. We just are getting a budget approved, $1 trillion, highest budget we've ever had in history for military, $1 trillion. And we're getting the greatest missiles, the greatest weapons. And, you know, I hate to do it, but you have to do it because we believe in peace through strength. You have to have the strength, otherwise bad things could happen. But hopefully we'll never have to use any of those weapons. Seems to be an awfully big waste of money if you're never going to use them, but hopefully we'll never have to use them because the destructive power of some of those weapons are like nobody's seen before. I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America, and to promote the fundamental interest of stability, prosperity, and peace. That's what I really want to do.
And he makes an awful lot of sense, doesn't he?
It really does. That's what I was trying to say, that he's talking about almost hands-off approach, respecting what they are doing, but having those relationships, having those dialogues, because otherwise we end up in the situation where, I mean, look at us with our pathetic little EU summits. Every couple of weeks we've got another one next Monday, another EU summit, and they'll all gather in London or Paris or wherever. And
charge loads and loads of money to the taxpayer.
I mean, these things cost millions of pounds, absolutely wasted. And they'll talk about things like Ukraine, but they're not they have no influence. Whereas Trump goes out there and he talks to people, and it feels like a completely different. It's an investment for him. He wants to make America great again. He wants to defend America.
And people are critical of him
sometimes. That's what he's talking about.
And sometimes people are critical of him because they say, but he just wants money, he wants financial deals. Well, what's wrong with that?
Well, that's what he wants. That's what he is. The art of the deal, that's what he is. He's a businessman. But he's going to make America more prosperous. He's going to defend, he is defending America. And you know what, Mike, we could do with some investment in this country. This country's falling apart. Why don't we see our leaders out there doing those kind of deals?
Well, I mean, you could maybe bring some Qatari money in to build a few prisons.
Well, there you go.
They know how to run. They know how to run a prison in Qatar.
They absolutely know how to run a prison. One of those. And there wouldn't be any female guards, would there?
I don't think so. No,
doing
absolutely
that stuff.
Right. Also, talking of the European Union, apparently Italy and Denmark are actually asking the EU to limit the powers of the ECHR. So they're saying that basically they're not any longer fit for purpose when it comes to immigration matters. So, I mean, you know,
finally catching up,
Starmer, if he had any brains, would lump himself in with that and say, well, we're going to do the same thing. Because if he really believed in what he was saying on Monday, then he would want to do away with the ECHR. But of course, he doesn't believe in it. Dan Hodges writing in the Mail today.
There was nothing to do with Starmer.
Exactly. And, you know, we kicked off that whole the debate because we were the ones that sourced the 2020 video of him saying how he wanted to talk up the benefits of migration, which was then adopted by Reform. And that is, according to Dan Hodges, the real Keir Starmer, because he really believes in immigration. He doesn't think it should be stopped.
No, and his speech on Monday, I mean, Dan Hodges is saying it was effectively a kind of Morgan McSweeney thing that he had to say, and it was a panicky response to, you know, chase the Reform.
It was all cobblers.
Of course it was, and it's a response to the Reform, kind of the Reform quake. But he's all over the place. He doesn't believe a word of what he says, and joyfully he's caused all sorts of trouble now amongst the Labour kind of crybabies going, oh, we can't be tough on immigration.
And now a lot of them are talking about rebelling on the back benches, particularly over disability.
You think it's going to happen? I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, I'll wait and see on that one. But have a look at this. This is Liz Saville-Roberts from Plaid Cymru yesterday asking a question that an awful lot of people wanted to ask Keir Starmer.
This Prime Minister once spoke of compassion and dignity for migrants and for defending free movement. Now he talks of islands of strangers and taking back control. Somebody here has to call this out, Mr. Speaker. It seems the only principle he consistently defends is whichever he last heard in a focus group. So I ask him, is there any belief he holds which survives a week in Downing Street?
Yes, the belief that she talks rubbish.
Now, look at the two different reactions there. On his left, Rachel Reeves guffawing with laughter because her job is definitely on the line. On his right, Angela Rayner, absolutely stony-faced because she knows, one, that that's not Labour Party policy and it should never be Labour Party policy. She also doesn't like the fact that he's talking to a woman like that. Can you imagine if Boris Johnson had said something like that to Liz Savile-Roberts or had said something like that to any woman in the Labour Party?
It's a really good point, actually. It's extremely demeaning, isn't it?
And it takes us back, always takes me back to Rosie Duffield, who says that Keir Starmer's got a problem with women.
Yeah.
I think he has.
Well, I think he has.
I think he's treating that woman there as if she's lower than the snake's belly.
You remember
what do you know? You're a woman.
You know, you remember the reaction to "Calm Down, Dear"?
Yeah.
Which was Boris Johnson, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. No, it was Cameron, wasn't it?
Was it Cameron?
I think it was Cameron, yeah.
But anyway, the outrage about that, because it was the Conservatives saying that.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I mean, and also such a childish response from him because he's really got nothing else in the tank, has he?
Because she's
right. He doesn't have a response
The bottom line is she's right.
Yes.
Because he's willing to change his mind on absolutely anything to save his own skin.
He's absolutely hypocrite.
He's absolutely awful.
Yeah.
Just the worst
he really is the worst
Prime Minister I've ever seen.
had.
Morning, Mike, says Ray in Liverpool. The simple solution to the prison crisis, deport the 12,000 foreign criminals. Why is this not mentioned? Well, we just mentioned it a little while ago. That's exactly what we should be doing. And particularly he's going to Albania because more than 3/4 of them are from Albania. Can someone tell Starmer that it's not just the smuggling gangs or the criminals, says Dean in Dagenham. It's also everyone that enters the country illegally. He never seems to mention those people who come in by dinghy.
And
that's the point.
We've got all the people crossing over every single day, consistently, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds every single day. You've got the people that are literally in prison, who we know about. You said 10,000 Albanians, 12,000 Albanians. There are many, many, many other foreign criminals who could be deported. And then you've got people, thousands of them in this country, who are overstaying, who literally disappear into the system.
Of course. And that's the problem. Nobody really knows actually how many illegal people there are in this country. Nobody knows.
I mean,
the Home Office doesn't know.
As they did their wonderful Indian trade deal the other day, it was revealed that Indians are the ones who consistently overstay the most on their visas.
Right.
So already...
So let's invite loads more of them in.
Exactly. Yeah. But if you just got a handle on a couple of those issues, like our borders, the people in prison and the overstayers, already you were actually tackling a problem, and they don't seem to be able to do any of it.
They can't do any of it at all. Absolutely ridiculous. 6:36. We'll be back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is...
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:37. Emma Wolf is here with us as well. Here's one from Tony who says, why don't Butlins run our prisons? We're halfway there already. This country is a laughing stock around the world. Yeah, not a bad idea. Probably prison is probably better than Butlins, actually. Probably get better treated. Let's get a voice note from Graham.
Morning, Mike. It's Graham in Manchester. Looking forward to the usual great show. I think you should dedicate today's show as the home of common sense. What is Flip-Flop Kia going to come out with today? Let's get it dedicated to two-tier Kia.
Well, I mean, we dedicate the show every day practically to two-tier Kia. Well, he's off to Albania today, but he's not taking any Albanian criminals with him, which is what he should be doing.
Of course.
He should turn up a bit like Trump. Can you imagine? You know, the sort of the big motorcade, and instead of having like loads and loads of, you know, big SUVs coming behind him, he should have a load of trucks, prison vans, with a load of prisoners in, and go, here you go, here's your prisoners back.
That would be such a powerful thing to do. And Trump would probably do it just for the photo opportunity. You'd have them all chained up and you just take them out and you say, there you go.
But you see, for Starmer, all I can see in my mind's eye as a vision is him in the Only Fools and Horses three-wheeler. Rodney, you plonker, where have you lost all the immigrants? What have you done with them?
It would all
and they
go
must have
wrong.
escaped on the ferry. Oh no!
Get
we'll have to
Lammy
go
and
back.
Rayner to unload
Lammy.
them.
What's going on with Lammy? What is that story
David
about?
Lammy. I love what Rod Liddell said. What Rod Liddell wrote in the Sun or wherever, the Daily Mail. He said that David Lammy loves the high life, but he's not keen on paying for it. And I'm afraid that is at the root of this,
is
6-hour taxi trip, overnight taxi trip with his wife. After hanging out with the King and the Queen in France, he fancied a bit of a ski trip in Italy. So he got a taxi and drove 6 hours at our expense. How much did it cost? 600, 700
Something
quid?
like that.
I don't know.
The thing, well, overall, I think they talked about some kind of cost of 1,500 quid. It's one of those weird stories where it's very hard to actually get at the truth. But what we know is that basically David Lammy, having accompanied the King and Queen on their 4-day state visit to Italy, a place called Forlì, he decided he wanted to go to Switzerland, right? So he had to cross the Alps somehow, 360 miles in a taxi, right? According to a map in the Daily Mail. He was then charged £590 for the fare, which he's claiming he paid for in advance. So that's how the row supposedly started. And the taxi driver's saying, well, it doesn't matter, they still owed us extra money because of all the distances that they drove at. But apparently then there was a row, and the taxi driver drove off with Lammy's bags, right? Included in which were some very sensitive papers, his diplomatic passport, and all the rest of it. The driver apparently alleged that. I think the Lammys alleged that the driver opened the compartment and showed a knife while demanding more money. He's now been charged by the police with threatening behaviour, but he's also counter-suing them for the money. So, and the Foreign Office say none of this is true. You know, they're sort of denying it outright, saying that this guy was trying to rip them off. But who takes a 6-hour taxi drive?
Gives you an interesting insight into the way that Lammy just decided to live his life. And you're right, it was from Italy to France to the Alps. Him and his wife just fancied a couple of days of a ski trip. I mean, should he not have just given him the card and said, the credit card and dealt with it and covered it?
I just don't think. I mean, we've all been in some pretty. I mean, as a journalist and a reporter, I've been in some pretty weird situations where you have to get from point A to point B. But I don't think I'd have ever taken a 6-hour drive in a taxi. I think I'd have rented a car or something. Or tried to think about taking a train somewhere.
In Europe
and
would
then
have actually taken an hour and a half across.
I mean, if he had got himself to Bologna, I'm sure he could have got a train somewhere nearer and then took a taxi from there, something like that. You know, instead of which, obviously, because he thinks he's a VIP, he has to get his own personal limo to take him there.
Exactly, and also it just doesn't sound very secure or very safe if you've got a driver that thinks it's not like Uber or a firm where they've been paid in advance. It's all on the log, or it's a diplomatic driver, or it's a private car, or something like that. It's some kind of ministerial transport.
Suppose if
this sounds very insecure.
I suppose if he'd got some kind of special driver from the British Embassy in Italy, we would have been giving him a hard time for that. But the point is, it's all very odd behaviour. That's what it always surprises me with these politicians.
And they think they can cover it up. They think this is not going to come out, don't they?
And there's obviously a dispute as to what happened, but the fact is this guy drove off with some sensitive documents in his car, and who knows who's
probably
read
the Foreign
them.
Secretary's passport as well.
And this is the Foreign Office spokesman says, we totally refute these allegations. The fare was paid in full. Well, not according to the driver. Sorry.
It is 360-mile trip. He could have done it in some other way, and he had his diplomatic bags in the boot of the car.
Yeah. Very weird. Very weird. We'll get on to Gary Lineker next, I suppose. He's on page 7 of the Mail, page 3 of the Telegraph. He's finally had a day of outrage and apologised unreservedly for his anti-Semitic rat emoji post. It sort of beggars belief that Gary Lineker doesn't understand what he's doing and doesn't get what he's doing. Now, he's either incredibly stupid. I know he's not as bright as he thinks he is.
No, he's certainly not.
But he's surely not stupid enough to think that a rat depicted as a Jewish person, because the important thing about the rat is that it's got a human face. It's not just a rat, and it's a depiction of a Jewish person, which is the sort of thing the Nazis did during the Second World War, during the 1930s.
Deeply, deeply offensive. And what astonishes me is that the BBC continued to hang on to him. I mean, this isn't his first infraction
Not at all.
of rules that other people in the BBC certainly have to follow.
Yeah.
In fact, they've been told they're not meant to go on, they're not meant to express political opinions publicly or in any kind of way.
Well, he's been in and out of trouble with this for about a good year, hasn't
really does feel as though he's far more powerful than the BBC bosses. I think Tim Davie would just do well. It would be good for the popularity just to get rid of him.
Just so you know, we
sorry,
were going to let him.
Too far.
His contract was going to run till the end.
You
of
clearly
the
have
season.
very strong political views, and I'm afraid that's not consistent with BBC values or whatever.
Yeah, and also this particular conflagration is actually anti-Semitic.
Yes, it is.
You know, he said, "I would never knowingly share anything anti-Semitic." And there's somebody we spoke to yesterday, a guest, Jake Wallace-Simons, yesterday from the Jewish Chronicle. We said, he said, yeah, he's not anti-Semitic. He just keeps retweeting people who are.
Well, and it keeps retweeting stuff that echoes Nazi propaganda. Yeah, basically.
Yes. It is absolutely extraordinary.
I think he's got fricked. He's got terrified, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And he's realised,
uh-oh,
I've really overstepped the mark this time.
I think he's realised he might have jeopardised any future employment.
Absolutely. I mean, he's in his mid-60s. Who else is going to snap him up at the cost of £1.5 million, £2 million? No one.
It was Al Jazeera. You know, that's maybe where he's going to end up.
Is he really that good?
Well, I mean, he's a pretty good sports presenter, you have to say. I don't criticise him for that. But he's an idiot. As far as I'm concerned. What about page 1 of The Sun? This is a marriage made in hell, isn't it? Harry and Meghan have apparently decided to reach out to Brooklyn Beckham and his wife, who are having a feud, their own feud, and they're calling it Begxit.
Yeah.
Quite funny, this.
This is hilarious. This is the story of the family. I've been writing a lot about this. I've been a bit of a celeb, a showbiz journalist in recent weeks. But the Beckham fallout is very, very similar to the Harry and Meghan fallout with the father, the family kind of saga thing here. And now it appears, in a twist in this delightful tale, it appears that Harry and Meghan in California have actually been hanging out with Brooklyn and Nicola.
Right. That explains a lot, doesn't it?
Of course it does. And their sense of grievance against their families. Yeah. Nicola is the difficult daughter-in-law who's apparently fallen out with the difficult mother-in-law, Victoria Beckham. Yeah. And obviously, you know, Meghan has done everything she can to alienate Harry from his family. Right. To basically, I mean, he's a miserable man. I mean,
he's not happy, is he?
He's an idiot as well. He's another one, like Lineker, who's not as bright as he thinks he is.
No, he really isn't.
But he really has been completely estranged from his family. Meghan has systematically. Yeah. People have said, if it was the other way around, if it was a man doing this to a woman, you'd call it coercive control.
You would.
And I'm not saying that about Meghan, but she has systematically...
It does look a bit like that.
Dismantled and removed him from every tie. He comes back to this country and he has nothing. He really has no mates. Although I love the stuff about him wandering around Chelsea trying to find someone's... ringing on doorbells.
Yeah, I've just seen a meme of him
in
dressed
these
up as a
£1 million townhouses, wandering around one of these places.
Well,
in
the question is, what's he really looking for? That's what my question was. What's he really doing?
Exactly. What was he really up to on that night? That would be interesting.
And where's his security?
I need security. This is a matter of life and death, he said in that BBC interview. It's absolutely ridiculous.
But not in Fulham.
And also in the, I think it's in The Sun, her popularity, Meghan's popularity, it's in the Mail. Meghan's popularity
all-time low
is now at an all-time low. The only other royal who is as unpopular or more unpopular than her is the Duke of
York. Yeah, Prince Andrew, absolutely
Grand old.
Right. I mean, I don't know much about David Beckham's son, but Brooklyn. But if he's getting friendly support from Prince Harry, I think he needs to take a second look at that.
Really does, exactly.
To end up, if that's how he wants to end up, you know, good luck to you. It's 6:47. We've still got plenty more to talk about, including the front page of the Daily Telegraph, in which it says NHS is offering treatment to trans toddlers. Believe it or not. Let's get a voice note from Simon.
Morning, Mike. Simon from Buckinghamshire. Why don't they just build more prisons? Can you push any guests that you have on your show about why they won't just build a new prison? Especially with all the people that we're getting over the channel, it's quite obvious we are going to need 1 or 2 new prisons. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I think I've been saying, why don't they build new prisons for about 10 years? And yet they still haven't built any. They promised to build some. They've started building some, I think. I think the Tories started building a couple of super prisons, but nobody seems to know what's happened to them.
Well, Simon, I've got a brilliant idea. Why don't we get some of the criminals, or maybe the foreign criminals, to get to work and make them build prisons? Yeah. In America, you go there and you see chain gangs and you see people cleaning roads and doing, you know, the kind of work that needs to be done on the roadworks and all of that
absolutely.
Stuff. Why are criminals just sitting there, either seemingly having relations with their prison guards or just sitting around watching TV and getting up to all sorts? Why are they not out there? building prisons.
You know, like Hashim Abedi was doing, so you could cook up some butter and throw it in the face of a prison guard. It's absolutely extraordinary what is going on. But we'll be back. Emma Wolf is here at 6:48.
We know that over the past 3 years he's been on countless foreign jet-setting luxury trips around the world at our expense. He says it's to, foster relations with foreign countries and to tell them how wrong Russia was to invade Ukraine. I'm not sure what that has got to do with the Speaker, but there you are. He spent about £300,000 over the last 3 years going on these luxury trips.
Talk across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There's bad news about Barry Island there on the old the traffic report. I don't know what's going on operational. I've just been told by Christian it's about one stop. You can actually walk it. I mean, be very careful if you go to Barry Island today. Lovely day for it. Not quite so sunny as it has been, but never mind. I once got a suntan on the Gower Peninsula. It was quite frightening. I wasn't expecting it, I have to say. Anyway, Emma Wolf is here. Nice to see you.
I don't know where Barry Island is or what you're on about.
It's South Wales.
Right. And what's happened?
Well, there's an operation incident which has shut the train line between Barry and Barry Island, which is literally... it's like an episode of that show with... what's his face, isn't it? Gavin and Stacey. It's like an episode of that. That's kind of all filmed around there.
Okay.
Very funny. Okay. Anyway, listen, very funny couple of stories to talk about. Daily Star this morning has got Universal Studios row, because, the thing that Keir Starmer thinks is going to save his career is by building a theme park in Bedfordshire. Big fat gypsy theme park battle. TV star Paddy Doherty has warned Universal Studios they face a battle with travellers who are living by the planned mega theme park, and they're vowing not to be forced out. So that's the first problem. Let's have a look at what Starmer said when he was announcing it.
As you can imagine, when I took over as Prime Minister, people warn you that there are tough days that you're going to face. Responsibility for the armed forces, for fixing the NHS, sorting out the economy. So you can imagine that when someone comes and says, would you like to launch and open a theme park? That's a completely different day. And that's why I was so delighted when Mike came to Downing Street yesterday and we were able to shake hands on this deal, this new Universal UK resort and theme park. What a momentous day. What such an important day.
What a momentous day. Well, apparently they didn't do much of research before they announced it, because there's a travellers park, caravan park, right on the property, and they ain't moving.
And you know what they say?
If anybody's ever tried to move some travellers, you know what you're up against.
Well, I'm glad you said it, Mike, because I don't think they're going anywhere. They say, we're human beings and they won't be putting us nowhere because we won't be moving for no one.
Exactly.
But I'm still reeling from the inauthenticity, the embarrassment
when he does
of
that
watching
smile.
Starmer trying to look kind of funny and relaxed. I mean, Boris Johnson going to Peppa Pig World. that's how you do it. You just go and you make a fool of yourself and you just do whatever with your kids.
Yeah.
But all this long
people,
lead up about people told me it was going to be difficult being Prime Minister.
And all these people standing behind him who look bored, absolutely stiff.
They look really
and look at Rachel Reeves got even more carried away. It's all this fakery that they do. Watch her trying to look happy.
They're trying to do human.
Now, I know that I'm not going to make any apologies for focusing on the numbers. I'm the Chancellor of the Exchequer. But even I will take a moment to also acknowledge that the thrill and the excitement of this theme park for all of the millions of families that will experience it is also a wonderful thing to bring to our country.
The same lot behind her looking completely and utterly disinterested and unconvinced.
It's like rigor mortis watching those two trying to be funny.
Like now, when I started doing this show this morning, Emma, I was so happy that I realised that suddenly we were going to talk about some good news stories. That's how you do it. You just keep
and
smiling.
Excitement for thousands of families.
Good. Isn't it great? I can't wait to get started.
I've never been near a theme park in my life, she says.
You know.
No, well, it was meant to create billions for the economy.
It's mad. I'm going to start doing half the show like that. Anyway, back to more mundane matters. Front page of the Daily Telegraph. The NHS offers treatment to trans toddlers. I know this is a story you've talked about many times.
Absolutely ludicrous. We thought that we were getting some sense, actually. We thought the tide was turning on the whole gender ideology thing, didn't we? When we were finally able to say, oh, do you know what? A man is a man, a woman is a woman.
But the NHS is fighting it.
The NHS is still treating a few, not many, but a number of toddlers, basically, children who are under 7 on this absolute nonsense. They say things like, oh, but we know that showing an interest in clothes or toys of the opposite sex is not indicative of gender incongruence. You don't need to have clothes and toys of the opposite sex.
Right.
Just let kids play. If they've got a problem as grown-up, as teenagers or adults, then you give them counselling. You don't change sex. You don't take them into gender specialist clinics at the age of 4, 5 or 6. This is where the problem starts. This is where you start confusing children and telling them they can be anything, that they're not necessarily a girl or a boy.
Or a cat
honestly.
or something.
And as if the NHS wasn't under enough stress and pressure, we still have these nonsense gender specialist clinics, which, frankly, Mike, it's worse than child abuse what they're doing to these children.
I know.
It really is.
It's shocking. And also the government's going to have to get a grip of the NHS and say, look, you people, this is a law.
This is the law.
The Supreme Court has
now
ruled on this.
You don't have gender...
you don't have...
incongruence.
No, you don't have a sort of, a movable feast here. No. You don't get to reinterpret the law just for the purposes of the NHS. You in fact have to follow the law like every other public sector body. So you better get on it.
Yeah, exactly. We've had a lot of people coming out and go, we're not going to follow that. We're not going to... No, this is the law now. This is the guidance.
Exactly right. Meanwhile, more worryingly in the NHS, I saw in the Mail today, more than 16,600 people suffered needless death in England last year due to long waits in the A&E, the equivalent of something like 320 deaths a week, a fifth higher than it was in 2023.
Yeah, and the Daily Mail, the headline there, talking about this being equivalent to having 2 big plane crashes every week in terms of needless deaths. People just... And, the lack of dignity. You think of your parents, my parents, the fact that old people are waiting in corridors, the fact that people are kind of in waiting rooms, desperately ill, needing emergency care.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you go to A&E. Right. It's not fun.
Right. You don't go there as a sort of a superannuated waiting room. You need to be seen.
You need to be seen, exactly.
Soon.
And when you have ambulances stacked up, they can't then go and, attend critical incidents. So it's absolutely... I mean, when are we going to get a grip in the NHS?
I know, absolutely ridiculous. One thing here from Michael in Lincoln, who says this: hearing the very unsurprising news that Dr. Jill was running the White House due to Sleepy Joe's failing faculties makes me wonder, should we be relieved when we remember Kamala Harris was the Vice President? Well, I suppose we should be. If you've forgotten how bad it was, here he is, Joe Biden, former President of the United States of America.
She knows so long as she was denied, our freedom can never be secured.
Yeah, let's do it again. Sorry, just check this out. This guy was running the biggest military complex country in the entire world.
She knows so long as she was denied, our freedom can never be secured.
How?
Sorry, what?
How
Go
is
on,
it?
one more time. Just one more time. Try and work out what he's saying. Come on.
She knows so long as she was denied, our freedom can never be secured.
Was you going to 9?
No, but we shouldn't. No, hold on. We shouldn't laugh at people who are in the later stages of dementia. But they shouldn't be running the White House. They shouldn't be running.
But how could they even let him do that?
Exactly.
You know,
I don't think we should laugh at him for being very demented.
I'm sorry, it's funny.
That is unacceptable. And how is that allowed to carry on?
And also, how many people were covering up for him and saying,
I know.
while that was all going on, he's absolutely fine. They didn't even say he has good days and bad days. They just went, he's fine. Absolutely fine. No problem at all.
We were not allowed to talk about it.
Go in one more blast. Go on, just before the top of the hour.
She knew so long as she was 9, our freedom can never be secured.
Oh, dear. Deary me. Anyway, listen.
I think I like the clip. My favourite Biden clip was when he sort of walks that way and then someone guides him back and he doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know where he is.
The one when he falls flat on his face as well.
Terrible.
He's just thinking, what is going on?
Is he in a care home now?
I don't know. No idea. Presumably Jill Biden's pumping him full of something or other to keep him alive for a while so she could continue.
She was running the White House while she was teaching community college classes.
Yeah. Brilliant. Anyway, Emma, thank you very much indeed. Emma Wolf, great hour. We'll be back with more because we've got plenty to do. We're going to find out exactly what is going on inside the brain of Keir Starmer as he heads off to Albania. But he's not taking any prisoners with him, which is what he should be doing, of course. We'll be back with loads more. Keep your voice notes coming, 0344 499 1000. We'll be back right here on Morning Glory after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. It's a bit gloomy out there this morning. We've had great sunshine for most of the week. It's now Thursday, of course, the 15th of May. If you haven't realised that, then I'm sorry for you. Payday for a lot of people today, so people will be happy going out there spending the money, but they'll find, of course, that they haven't got as much money to spend as they thought. Because there's a piece on the front page of the I newspaper this morning that says UK food and drink prices set to rise in a blow to Starmer's cost of living plan. We said this ages ago, didn't we? A couple of weeks ago, when they had the new inflation figures that said inflation is now holding at around about 2.6%. And I said, not in my world and not in anybody else's world that we know of. Rising prices of butter, chocolate, coffee, lamb, potatoes, all soaring. Every time you go to the supermarket, the prices have gone up yet again. We'll talk about that this morning and why it is that so many other countries around the world are cheaper to buy these goods in than ours. The Food and Drink Federation is warning that an inflationary effect of the new Workers' Rights Bill and fizzy drinks tax is going to put prices up even more. Not to mention the national insurance rises, of course, as well. Now the GDP figures are out today, a bit of breaking news. The economy apparently grew by 0.7% in the first quarter of the year, which pretty much once again means it's not really growing at all. It's flatlining, as we have been saying for a very, very long time. Under this government, under Rachel Reeves and her hapless, useless stewarding of the economy, we are going down the economic gurgler faster than you can say Universal Theme Park. Sorry, I don't know why I did that. We'll be talking about great many things this morning. James Price is here. The big story on many of the front pages this morning is Labour going soft yet again on criminals. They're going to start letting out sex offenders and serial abusers, domestic abusers, into the general population. Because why? Because the prisons are full up again. They were full up back in autumn, so they decided to let a load of people out. Well, now they've managed to fill them up again. They're going to have to let more people out on early release. So jails are apparently in crisis, according to Shabana Mahmood, who is, of course, the Secretary of State for Justice. They're also going to say if they have to recall any of these prisoners into prison because they've re-offended after being released, they'll only have to stay back in there for another 28 days. So if you come out and you're a serial sex offender and you commit another sex offence, there's a pretty good chance that you go back to prison, but in a month you'll be back out again. Absolutely incredible stuff. We'll be talking about Keir Starmer today as well. He's off to Albania, believe it or not, to see whether he can meet up with the Prime Minister, Edi Rama, in Tirana. What he wants to do, it sounds like a song, that, doesn't it? Edi Rama in Tirana, like the Copacabana. Anyway, he's going out there without taking any of the foreign prisoners who are currently sitting in prison cells in this country, which would free up about 10,000 spaces. Most of them are from Albania. Why isn't he taking them with him, for heaven's sake? 0344 499 1000 is the number. So many other stories to talk about. I can't even begin to tell you. Donald Trump sort of completely mastering his trip to the Middle East, having been in Qatar, having been in Saudi Arabia. Today he goes to Abu Dhabi. There's so much happening around the world. We've got it all for you right here at the home of common sense. Don't go anywhere. This is Morning Glory. A couple of people have got in touch on the subject of Joe Biden as well, because we've been reminded of Joe Biden and his hopelessness just this morning, because there's a new book out in America in which it says that Jill Biden was basically running the White House. Incredible. One here from Michelle in Altrincham. She says, cracking show, still the only thing stopping me from launching toast at the telly. I'm off to Albania tomorrow for a quick escape and might bump into Starmer, unless he's wandered off following the scent of a focus group and a half-baked policy. If I see him, I'll say the talk sends its love, and maybe ask if the plan is still in the post. If Sakir's just on another jolly collecting stamps in his passport while the rest of us collect illegal immigrants. Absolutely right. And Nan in Wales says, morning Mike, I'm fuming disgusted at the response Starmer gave to Liz in yesterday's PMQs. I'm no fan of the Welsh politicians, but it is proof he has no respect for democracy, for the House of Westminster, or indeed for women. Well, let's kick off with that, and let's start with James Price, political commentator. James, very good morning to you.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Very well indeed. I don't know whether you've seen this clip from PMQs yesterday, but I'm going to play it to you. It's very short. It's Liz Saville-Roberts, who's a Plaid Cymru MP. Now, I'm not normally somebody that supports much of what Plaid Cymru does, but I think if you watch Keir Starmer's reaction to this, it tells you a lot about the man. And if you look at Angela Rayner's reaction to what he says, it tells you a lot about her as well. Have a look.
This Prime Minister once spoke of compassion and dignity for migrants and for defending free movement. Now he talks of islands of strangers and taking back control. Somebody here has to call this out, Mr. Speaker. It seems the only principle he consistently defends is whichever he last heard in a focus group. So I ask him, Is there any belief he holds which survives a week in Downing Street?
Yes, the belief that she talks rubbish.
Now, I think that tells you an awful lot about the man, Keir Starmer. It tells you lots about Rachel Reeves and tells you plenty about Angela Rayner, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I've got to admit, I'm ashamed to admit that I burst out laughing when he did it. It was such a shock because the man is so robotic almost all of the time. And when he talks about things he actually cares about, we know he cares about football, for example, right? Long-time season ticket holder, all that sort of stuff. When he talks about it, he sounds like a politician trying to talk about football because it's what he thinks people like. And yet this time he actually managed to sound spontaneous and off the cuff. But as we've seen, this big backlash because he doesn't seem to treat male MPs in quite the same way. And whilst Reeves burst out laughing next to him, Angela Rayner had a face that could be described as thunder if that wasn't offensive to.
Well, I think she's offended on two counts. One, she knows that he doesn't believe the immigration nonsense that he came out with on Monday, and she doesn't think it should be Labour Party policy. And two, she doesn't like to see him speaking to women like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Although on the substance of it, of course, Liz Saville Roberts, that classic Welsh name, she's about as Welsh as
I am.
Yeah, well, quite, or as a kangaroo or something, right? And she lives in a village of about 2,000 people where she's probably the only immigrant coming over from England. And so her idea of going, oh, I will be the moral arbiter of all of this stuff, I mean, it's complete rot. Let's see how she wants it to be like if her village was suddenly flooded with fighting age men in asylum hotels or people who contribute absolutely nothing but sit around from other countries and come into our social housing with our taxpayer money paying for it.
Yeah.
So I think Starmer was probably right in the substance, but in the delivery, perhaps he could have been a little more restrained.
Well, I mean, as I say, I don't believe a word of his immigration policy. I don't think he does either. In fact, Dan Hodges has written a piece in the Mail today very much to that effect. The clip that we showed on Monday back from 2020 when he was regaling us all with the joys of immigration and how we should be celebrating the benefits of immigration, that's the real Keir Starmer. The one that we saw on Monday is the fake Keir Starmer who's talking through as a ventriloquist dummy of Morgan McSweeney because he thinks that's what the public want to hear. And he's right that that's what the public want to hear, but the public are hearing it and they're not buying it from him because most people who are voting reform because of what reform are offering and because they're fed up with Labour and the Tory party telling them they're going to clamp down on immigration. They're not doing anything about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. But I think what the country needs, as you say, is to see massively reduced immigration, especially of the kinds that we've had for far too long, where people have very low skill or no skill, no English language, a greater propensity perhaps towards violence, as we've seen in some of the statistics that come out and commit more crimes than their fair share. And we don't manage to then attract all the best people from around the world. And so our system has been totally topsy-turvy. And if it takes Starmer's sort of naked ambition and desire to stay in power to do a good thing, and that happens to be good for the country, well, I'll take that, frankly.
Yeah, I would agree with you, except you know as well as I do, he's not doing anything. He's off to Albania today, right? What he should be doing, as I said earlier, is taking the Albanian prisoners who are all sitting in our jails, which are now in crisis because they haven't got any room in them. He should be putting them all on a series of coaches and driving them to Albania, and he should be at the head of the motorcade, and he should say to the Prime Minister of Albania, you know, you can have these back for a start. Now let's talk about what else you can do where you can make some money from us.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, the fact that we've got such a high overproportion of Albanians in the prison system is some mad statistic, like 1 in every 20 Albanians in the country has been arrested. It's just extraordinary. And, you know, we still have this sort of old-fashioned idea that we shouldn't be judging people coming into this country on the basis of nationality. But if the statistics are this stark, then I think it's probably a lot more sensible. I don't think we have a problem of Australians and Canadians and Kiwis coming in. We don't have a problem with Americans coming in or Japanese. And then you start going down the list of people who contribute economically versus don't and versus cause lots of crime and stuff. I think it's a perfectly sensible policy. And while Starmer is, again, being accused of only following focus groups, well, focus groups and polls have said for 50, 60 years that people want immigration to be massively reduced. And they've been ignored by every party of every colour until now. And now all of a sudden we've got the three main parties of the Tories and Reform and Labour. They finally get it, and maybe they'll start doing something. And if it's not Labour, because they've now burned their boats, right, either they will manage to do this, and frankly, if Starmer gets immigration down from 800,000 to 80,000 a year, I'd be tempted to vote for him, because that would be a massive achievement. He's not going to do it. And of course, it then gives a great weapon for the Reform Party and the Tory Party to whack him with at the next election and hopefully wipe his sorry party out.
Yeah, but I'm afraid for the Tories, I think they will be left hanging high and dry as well, because once again, people saw what they did over the last 14 years, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years, after Boris Johnson promised net migration to come down to 20,000. They saw them failing to do that. So, I mean, their chances, I think, been and gone. I'm seriously considering that the Tory party may not exist by the time the next election rolls around, because, of course, what Starmer's reacting to is a poll that's come out in the Telegraph today. Almost half of the public now back a freeze on net migration. 46% of voters say they wanted either a one-in, one-out system or for more people to leave the country every year than to arrive. So finally, you know, what we've known for a long time is actually being published in the mainstream press, because they've finally got over this nonsense of being frightened of saying it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a poll from a company called Merlin Strategy, by the way, who are brand new and very good. I think they're ones to watch and will actually find out the truth of what people really think about this. I think on the point about the Tories, by the way, Robert Jenrick is so impressive for precisely this reason. He quit Rishi Sunak's government because he saw firsthand all the best data possible as a minister inside the Home Office on immigration. And he was sent there to keep an eye on Mean Suella and all of that. And instead, he got completely radicalized by the facts, by the state of the country being caused by these things. And he had the bravery to quit when he realized that Rishi Sunak wasn't willing to do the sorts of difficult changes to our legal system that would make this have to happen. Now, will, as you mentioned, Morgan McSweeney, this kind of Svengali-like figure behind Starmer, he gets it. Is he going to do these big, difficult changes? I'm skeptical, because it's that sort of stuff now we have to do in order to get immigration down. We have to change a lot of laws in the country.
Yeah.
To, I think, probably leave the ECHR. I think we have to certainly ignore all of this stuff and defund all kinds of mad quangos and other bits and take power back for actual ministers, which the blob is not going to like one bit.
No.
I don't see Starmer being able to do these sorts of radical changes, and we desperately therefore need the Tory party or the Reform Party or the coalition that comes next or whatever it is to have done all of this boring but very important work beforehand, so they don't come in on day one and get snookered by the civil service the way that every other party has been for so long.
Yeah, that I think is a very key point. And Nigel Farage, of course, would hopefully be able to cut through all that. Here's what he said yesterday on border security.
We at Reform, a party that is alive and kicking, very much enjoyed your speech on Monday. You seem to be learning a very great deal from us. But can I encourage you, please, to go further as a matter of national security? As a matter of national security. Over the weekend, an illegal immigrant from Iran, who we believe came by boat, was arrested in the north of England on serious charges of terrorism. Since the speech on Monday, 1,000 young, undocumented young males have crossed the English Channel. Does the Prime Minister agree? Now is the time to declare the situation in the English Channel as a national security emergency.
It wasn't my speech, it was the Prime Minister's.
Mr. Speaker, the situation is serious. The last government lost control of the borders. We are taking powers. The Borders Bill, precisely to his point, the Borders Bill is the first bill to give terrorism-like powers to law enforcement, precisely so that we can get in before the crimes are committed, before people get to this country. That's right. This is the most far-reaching provision ever for law enforcement to defend and secure our borders. And that's why it is extraordinary that he, of all people, voted against it. And sooner or later he's going to have to explain it.
Yes, you know, he still seems to think that by making new laws, he will curb lawlessness, you know, by people who ignore laws. It's a very, very bizarre and Byzantine way of conducting government, particularly when you say you're going to smash the gangs. You know, it's not going to make any difference to criminals if you bring in a new law, is it?
No, absolutely right. I think it was Cicero over 2,000 years ago who said, summum ius summa inieria, the more laws, the less justice.
Yes.
And the problem is not just about the laws that we've got at the moment. It's about the what I think political scientists would call state capacity, or for normal people, the ability to actually get stuff done that has been so lacking. And that comes from a lack of strong leadership. It comes from a lack of resources being put into the right places, and it comes from just generally that kind of will and know how to do it, because you've got so many people, whether they're ministers, whether they're civil servants and all the rest of it, who actually want lots of these people coming in. And the most egregious example of this is, I think, Care for Calais, a kind of charity that makes it easier for migrants to come in. And you see a video of some of these, they're all very like white middle class liberal women who are dancing away with the migrants in Calais, like, oh, aren't these guys fun and nice? Have a nice party with them, not caring at all, exactly as Nigel Farage said, that there'll be plenty of people there who will come into this country and then start to plan terrorist atrocities against us. Ludicrous, and those sorts of people need to be shut down as well.
Well, didn't one of the women from that particular charity end up getting involved with one of the migrants and ended up having some kind of steamy affair? I seem to remember that a few years ago. But they're only one of many organisations that aid and abet the ability for these people to not only come to the country in the first place, but to then stay here. By instructing them on what to say when they're being interviewed, by telling them how to get things when they get to the migrant hotels, coming in with packages of various pieces of information, how to get your free dental care, how to get seen by a doctor, you know, how to get yourself a job working for one of these, you know, illegal food delivery companies, you know, who are not checking up on you, all of that. You know, there's a massive, massive business growing in the charity sector of all of these people who want to help them. But the basic change, I think, now is that the public mood has definitely shifted in the past couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think a lot of us have known that we've been storing up bad problems for a long time, but it's just getting more and more impossible, frankly, to ignore it. We should have known this sort of problem was here in the late 1980s, when the author Salman Rushdie had to go into hiding for many years because we'd imported a bunch of people in this country who hated core values like freedom of speech and freedom of expression and freedom of conscience and all of these things that we all took in Britain to be self-evident. And we thought that people coming over here would suddenly magically become nice, cuddly, woolly liberals like the rest of us. And instead you've got people running around in the street chanting for the death of an author. And at no point did the establishment go, maybe we're stacking up some problems here in the places we decided we don't want to look and that we should do something about this. And instead we have been pulling in with glee and with gay abandon hundreds of thousands now of people who share none of our cultural values. And I think probably the best thing that Kemi Badenoch has ever said is the obvious point that not all cultures are equal and some are better than others. And some of the people's cultural practices that we've been importing are so heinous and disgusting that I won't say it over a cuddly breakfast show, but go and look at how women are treated in these sorts of societies. Go and look at how gay people are treated. Go and look, frankly, how anybody is treated. This is not the sort of stuff that we want to be importing into this country when, frankly, we've got problems enough of our own to fix already.
And funnily enough, looking at Donald Trump in the Middle East, in what you can call the successful Muslim countries of the world, like Saudi Arabia, like Qatar, places where they don't tolerate any kind of extremism, by the way, and they certainly wouldn't tolerate any pro-Palestinian march around their capital cities, you know. And I know that there are issues on human rights and all the rest of it, but you know, we've got to be clear that some of the people that we are allowing into this country would not be allowed to go into places like Saudi Arabia or Qatar, regardless of their religion.
No, I mean, the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, all those places that have turned from nothing into, frankly, paradises compared to what they were, the safest cities in the world, by the way. You know, you can leave a Rolex watch on your Rolls Royce out on the street and come back and get it the next morning. You can't walk down Oxford Street in central London with a phone in your hand without it being nicked, right? They get this stuff, and part of the reason is that they're tough on crime and they're tough on these people. They also don't allow all kinds of very dodgy Islamist groups and other cultural practices to happen. There are organisations founded in the UK that are banned by the UAE. These are Muslim organisations, and I don't think they laugh at us because they want to be our allies, but they certainly cry when they see this stuff. The fact that the Muslim Brotherhood, this is the sort of pan-Islamist organisation that is banned in Egypt, is banned now in Jordan as well, banned in the UAE, all these places, it's not banned here. And got dodgy foreign money coming into mosques and preaching all kinds of evil hate and all the rest of it. We've got 40,000 people of Islamists on the active MI5 watch list, and we're not taking this as the national emergency. And as Farage, I think, rightly says on this, you know, we're just having more of these people coming in. We must be completely suicidal to allow this.
I know. Absolutely incredible stuff. It's a very good point you make there, James. Thank you very much indeed. James Price, political commentator on the state of our nation compared to some other countries around the world. And we'll talk some more about that this morning, because I want to talk about pricing again, and the price of food, the price of services, the price of everything that we pay more for here than seemingly in any other country in the world. I've got this from John. He says, Mike, great show, great opinions. We've known for years that the most admired comedy star in Albania is Norman Wisdom. So today we are sending them his co-star, Mr. Grimsdale, as if the Albanians haven't suffered enough. Well, you want to have a look at the Albanian suffering. Check this out. The Albanian Prime Minister, Edi Rama, is rather a tall gentleman, and there he is standing next to Keir Starmer on the left and next to Rishi Sunak on the right. I've actually stood next to Keir Starmer. He's not that tall. And Rishi Sunak obviously is even smaller than that. But it looks like some kind of weird gladiatorial game that they're getting ready to do, doesn't it? But anyway, the meeting is going to go on today. Starmer's gone to Albania, or is on his way to Albania, to talk about the possibility of using third country hubs. But my argument is this. First, he should empty our prisons of Albanian crooks, take them back to Albania as the first move. And that is where you might actually get somewhere. 7:23.
I think the whole conversation has changed. You know, some of us have got scars on our backs from fighting for this stuff for years and years, years in which it was not just unfashionable, but completely taboo to be aggressively questioning and challenging the scale of uncontrolled immigration. You know, those of us that have been at the forefront of this political debate have been called every name under the sun, and that's fine. We're used to it. You stick your neck out, you've got to be ready.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 26 minutes past 7 actually. We are here, of course, for the duration until 10 o'clock. This from Margaret, who says, no idea Keir is off again. We have 1,100 freeloaders crossing the channel. Stay here and sort this country. He is out of his depth. Just resign. There we go. How about this? Maggie in London says this. When are Labour going to stop blaming the previous government? Do they realise this is the here and now? Start with deporting foreign criminals in prison. That might do for starters. This Labour government is acting like the Biden-Harris. Remember them? Administration. If I didn't watch your Common Sense programme every morning, I think I'd go off my rocker, says Maggie in London. Let's get a voice note from Donny.
Good morning, Mike. Donny on the Isle of Lewis. My daughter plays with toy trucks. My nephew plays with dolls. They're kids. Who cares? Leave them alone. These people should be struck off.
Yeah, he's talking about the story on the front page of the Daily Telegraph today, in which it says the NHS is offering treatment to trans toddlers. The children under 7 are being seen by specialist gender clinics as guidance is altered. You know, they still don't get it in the NHS. We'll talk some more about that coming up a little bit later on the show. Right now, though, let's talk to Steve Gillen, General Secretary at the Prison Officers Association, because big stories in the papers today about prison reform, about building more prisons, about letting more prisoners out, about dangerous sex offenders and people who have been sent into prison for violent behaviour being released simply because there isn't any space. Another prison officer being attacked yesterday as well. Steve, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Mike, and thanks for inviting me on.
It's a terrible situation right now, it would seem, inside of our prisons, but the Labour government seems to think the answer is to let the violent people out of the prison to become part of the general population. What do you think?
Mike, there's been a crisis in our prisons for many years now, and to be fair, Labour did inherit a crisis, not just in prisons, but the whole criminal justice system.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's always a good idea to let people out, but you know, what we need is a proper sentencing policy that protects society, protects victims, and we're seeing the repercussions in our prisons from overcrowding.
Yeah.
You know, again, yesterday, it seems that we're on the TV all the time discussing violent assaults against our members. We're holding our conference this week down at Eastbourne, and it's been the topic of our conference about the violence against our members now on a daily basis. 10,000 assaults every year now. Yeah. That's, you know, more than 27 a day, hospitalising our members, life-changing injuries. Something's got to change, Mike. It's getting that drastic.
Yes, exactly right. This latest one was at HMP Woodhill, Milton Keynes, which is supposed to be a high-security jail. And you have to ask the question about the kinds of rules that are being handed down. I know you guys don't control that, but in terms of the security of your own officers, surely there has to be a change in the way that prisoners are managed and handled by the powers that be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mike. And I'm going to be seeing the Prisons Minister, Lord Timpson, in about half an hour's time, because he's attending our conference. And that's exactly what we're going to be telling him, that the regimes need to be changed. Some of these individuals have got nothing to lose. Some of them are serving 55, 60 years. Yeah. And we think there should be supermax conditions for those individuals who pose a constant threat. Yeah. They were a threat to society. They're still a threat to my members who do a magnificent job on behalf of society every day, and we need that protection. We can't just allow individuals to have boiling water, kettles. We haven't got stab-proof vests yet, or tasers. Yeah. And I think it's long overdue, and I think people need to wake up and smell the coffee now. Yeah. Otherwise, I could be on here talking about a fatality, and I don't want that to happen, Mike.
No. I was told by a colleague of yours a little while ago that the stab vest question has been held up because there are some in the authorities who don't think that you want to look too confrontational. Well, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, if that's true, because surely what you look like should be precisely that. What you should look like is that you are people who don't take any nonsense, and you don't, you are not going to put yourselves in danger.
No, 100% agree with you. And at the end of the day, if people are intimidated by that, don't come to prison in the first place.
Well, right. I mean, I'm sorry. If you're in prison and you're feeling intimidated by the officers, well, I'm saying that's a good thing, actually, frankly. You know, and a lot of people would back you up on that. So, I mean, in terms of the short term, though, the prison crisis, as you say, has been around for a long time, but it's got a lot worse simply because we don't seem to have enough prison space. Do you think we should be building more prisons?
No, I don't. I think they should be maintaining the prisons that we have to make them secure, decent for staff and prisoners, quite frankly, because we've got to work in there. Some of them are rat-infested. You can't build your way out of a crisis because these prisons aren't going to be manipulated in a couple of months. We're looking years down the line. We want to be dealing with the here and now, quite frankly. And that investment, I've already said to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, save your billions of pounds on prison builds and invest that money in what we need now.
Yeah. And what about the foreign prisoner quotient? Because, I mean, Keir Starmer's off to Albania today. He's going to be seeing the Albanian Prime Minister with a view to possibly shifting a few migrants his way. It seems to me that if he took some of the Albanian prisoners out of prison, that would create a bit of space, and all the other foreign prisoners in there as well. He's supposed to be deporting those. I mean, how disruptive are those foreign prisoners, those foreign inmates, first of all? And why can't we just, I know this is not part of your pay grade perhaps, but why can't we just deport them and send them all back?
I think you've got to have reciprocal agreements with different countries, and I think, you know, whether it was a Conservative government or a Labour government, they've dragged their heels on that over the last probably 20 years, if I'm truthful. That is something that will be on the agenda, something that we will be talking to government about to make sure that the people that should be deported and that have got reciprocal agreements are to try and free up some space with regards to incarceration. There's a massive backlog of Crown Court cases. So it's just a sort of revolving door at the minute. They let people out early and then we're bringing them in. So, yeah, there's a major problem, Mike, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. OK. Well, listen, it's great to talk to you. A very, very sensible point of view coming from the Prison Officers Association. When you see my Lord Timpson, tell him he needs to come to see us and tell us what his plan is, because we haven't had him on, and I don't know why. But this, of course, is the home of common sense. Why wouldn't you want to come on here? Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Yeah, good morning, Mike. It's Andy from Bristol. One suggestion for freeing up space in Britain's prisons is to release all of Keir Starmer's political prisoners. Wonder if they'll think of that.
Yeah, well, you could do that as well. That would certainly free up about 100, wouldn't it? I mean, the number of people that get locked up in this country and the number of people who don't get locked up for things that they should get locked up for is quite ridiculous and quite remarkable. Getting ready for another day working in the job centre where we hand out vast sums of universal credit, says Neil. More than half of our claimants are foreign nationals. So here's an idea. Let's restrict benefit payments to British citizens only. That would mean a huge reduction and encourage migrants to return home, says Paul in Lincolnshire. Absolutely right. All this because the EU sellout, because Starmer hasn't got the balls to stand up to Macron and turn boats back mid-sea to France, says Andrew. Absolutely correct. And Ben & Jerry's at it again, says Robert in Hitchin. This time a new Gaza flavour. Just stick to ice cream, for goodness sake. Yeah, that was on the news, that one of the founders of Ben & Jerry's has been arrested for taking part in an anti-Israel protest. Absolutely ridiculous. You know, Ben & Jerry's, just make ice cream, for heaven's sake. This, of course, is Morning Glory. We're going to talk BBC coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of Common Sense. We're with you every single weekday morning from 6 until 10 for glorious hours. It's all kicking off here, of course. We're talking prisons, we're talking Trump, and we're talking, of course, Keir Starmer. He's off to Albania today. And we're also going to talk about the cost of living crisis as well, because prices literally are going to go up yet again as a result of some government policy, as a result of workers' rights, as a result of the national insurance increase, and basically the pound in your pocket, as they used to call it, is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Here's an idea. And how about we deport all the foreign criminals, says Barry in North Yorkshire. Straight away, we'd have plenty of space in prisons for our own criminals. It's not rocket science. Great show, mate. Yeah, it really isn't. It really isn't. You know, Starmer's busy with his prisons crisis. He's going to Albania. You know, why not marry up the two policies and deport Albanian criminals who are currently in our prison system? It's simply as easy as that. They're supposed to have already done a deal with Albania the last time that the Albanian Prime Minister was in town. But let's see. NATO foreign ministers are arriving, by the way, for a meeting in Antalya in Turkey. That's the latest news from there. We got David Lammy, I think. Can we go and speak to hear him?
The Russian.
Did he take a taxi there, by the way?
Individuals who are coming to represent the Russian side. It's hugely important that we redouble our efforts across the Euro-Atlantic to recommit to defence spending. It was back in 2014 in Wales that we made the 2% pledge, and I'm delighted that the UK met that pledge right throughout this modern history. But of course, it's now right that we step up that commitment. You saw that with Prime Minister Starmer making clear that we would meet 2.5% by 2027, and heading in to the next Parliament, we would get to 3%. This alliance, all of us were committing far more during the Cold War. It's hugely important that we recommit to Europe's defences and that we step up alongside our US partners in this challenging geopolitical moment where there are so many pressures across the world, and particularly...
Yeah, that's David Lammy, Foreign Secretary in Antalya, talking ahead of the summit, the peace talks, of course, which were possibly going to include Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump, but I don't think they're going to be including any of those. So we'll let you know what happens. It's more of a talking shop, I think, than anything else. As I say, I'm more interested in how Lammy got there, whether it was a private jet or a taxi. He seems to favour some very expensive modes of travel. And has he managed to keep his luggage with him this time? Or has he lost it on the way? Sorry to be pithy, but, you know, I'm afraid I can't take these people seriously. Rebecca Ryan, Campaign Director of Defund the BBC. Very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
I mean, the BBC, the story goes on and on and on and on. If we weren't talking about Gary Lineker, we'd be talking about Tim Davie, wouldn't we, this morning, basically telling us all about how the BBC must manage its reputation better. Maybe it'd be better if they actually managed the business better.
Absolutely. Did you have the pleasure of sitting through that speech? Because it was just awful, wasn't it?
No, because I knew it would be awful, so I thought I'll just catch up with bits of it later.
It was really badly read and just had loads of cheesy plugs for various TV series that they had out. It was just but it was like a really bad political broadcast. You know, about how amazing the BBC was. It was just awful. And the thing is, they've used this data to say that the BBC is the most trusted, but actually they haven't used, and this is what the BBC does well, is it spins things, obviously. They haven't used the net trust data, and actually the BBC is less trusted on a net trust basis than ITV and Channel 4. So they're kind of pushing this fact that everybody trusts the BBC to basically ask for more money when actually British taxpayers want to pay them less. You know, every time we have polls on this, you know, at least 2/3 of the country want to get rid of the TV license. And here's the BBC asking for more cash.
Well, the only people who keep telling us how great the BBC are people who either work for the BBC or who are in receipt of a great deal of money from the BBC for doing stuff that they wouldn't be paid the same amount for anywhere else. I mean, you know, Gary Lineker famously said, you know, the problem with the BBC is they keep listening to the people who hate the BBC and not listening to the people that love the BBC. Well, he's wrong about that, as he is about pretty much everything else. And as we proved yesterday, he either doesn't know how stupid he is, or he's that stupid he doesn't know, or he's a very clever man who thinks we're all stupid. I don't know which one of those three things it is.
Absolutely. I mean, this guy is just the gift that keeps on giving to defund the BBC, because he's constantly... well, is he messing up, or is he just really good at getting his name in the headlines? You know, maybe that's what it is. Maybe he actually just likes pushing these causes. And,
I wonder if there comes a point, and maybe that point came yesterday, when he realises that, you know, sometimes being in the headlines for the wrong reasons is actually going to damage your career.
Yeah, I think he realises now, doesn't he, that he's pushed it a little bit too far. I don't know how he doesn't know that calling Jews rats isn't, you know, we all learned in secondary school, didn't we? During history classes, we saw all the Nazi propaganda. Exactly what it means. So was he asleep during those lessons? You know, I just don't believe that he didn't know, but that's what he's claiming. And I think the thing is, with the BBC Charter, we're obliged to have journalistic excellence, and so he should know. And if he doesn't know, stop delving around into subjects that you're not aware of.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, as somebody said to me yesterday, Jake Wallace-Simons from the Jewish Chronicle, he said to me, it's not that Gary Lineker's an anti-Semite, it's just that he keeps retweeting people who are anti-Semitic, and he can't possibly not know what he's doing in that situation. But this time, there were a lot more calls for his firing and his sacking by some quite substantial individuals, lawyers, the Jewish organisations that keep an eye on all of this stuff, and some serious sort of politicians as well, calling for him. I mean, is there any, because surely if the BBC had any kind of backbone whatsoever, they would say, look, we know that you're no longer presenting Match of the Day after this season finishes, but because of this, we're actually going to pull the plug now. And they would gain an awful lot of kudos for that.
Well, they would. I mean, it's only been 2 weeks since the chairman of the BBC, Samir Shah, said that this culture of the untouchables was going to come to an end, and he was going to have this sort of, really strong, no tolerance approach to it. So absolutely, prove it and get rid of him. Pull the plug on it now, because he is a prime. Gary Lineker is a prime example of this untouchable. Constantly he is creating these issues. He is being extremely political. He's wading into very divisive, very complex issues that then he claims to know nothing about when he's stirred up trouble. So absolutely, he should go now.
Yeah, and what sort of message did it send as well to BBC employees, particularly Jewish BBC employees who felt very uncomfortable in the organisation in general, but certainly felt very uncomfortable around Gary Lineker?
Absolutely, it does send a message to them that the BBC doesn't value them, doesn't care about protecting them, because this, like I said, is a really divisive issue. It's really dangerous, as we saw in London after the attacks on Israel, that it was very, very volatile. And then you have this individual, the highest paid, who is just wading through. And as you said, you can't go looking through at those tweets without realizing that there's a huge amount of anti-Semitism, and it's just happily retweeting things or reposting things. It's not good enough.
No, I know, absolutely isn't good enough. Thank you very much indeed. Rebecca Ryan there, Campaign Director of Defund the BBC. We were talking earlier, speaking of defunding things, the front page of the Daily Star today has got a story about the big new theme park that's going to be built, the Universal Theme Park up in Bedford, near Luton in Bedfordshire, which was a massive big boost, if you remember, to Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, who could barely contain their glee when they announced it. I think it was probably, last month or something like that sometime. We're going to have a look at that in a minute. But apparently they've run into trouble putting the theme park together because there's a travellers site apparently very, very close by, or practically right on the place where they want to build the theme park. And they're saying, we've got a caravan park here, been here for many years, and we ain't moving, and not for no one. But let's have just a reminder of how pleased Keir Starmer was with himself with that rictus grin when he pronounced his good news. Have a look.
As you can imagine, when I took over as Prime Minister, people warn you that there are tough days that you're going to face. Responsibility for the armed forces, for fixing the NHS, sorting out the economy. So you can imagine that when someone comes and says, would you like to launch and open a theme park? That's a completely different day. And that's why I was so delighted when Mike came to Downing Street yesterday. And we were able to shake hands on this deal, this new Universal UK resort and theme park. What a momentous day. What such an important day.
Well, there's another important day today because Gypsy King Paddy Doherty is warning the Universal Studio bosses they face a battle with travellers who are living right next to where they want to build this theme park, and they ain't moving. Not for anyone. Let's get a voice note from Mike on prisons.
Hi Mike, it's Mike from the Dustbin of the World. Yes, Norwich. Well, how on earth can you increase the population by 1.2 million a year for 5 continuous years, being 6 million increase in the population of overseas people who we don't know much about them, and they're the legal ones, increase the population by 10% and then not increase the prison spaces by 10%? Because obviously a lot of new people are going to commit crime. And then not to mention all the illegals coming over. Come on, don't they expect any more criminals? Or do they want to be stupid like Mahmood said yesterday? And to keep our streets safe, we'll release all the existing prisoners onto the streets.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, does it? I know, the prisons are really dangerous inside, so here's what we'll do to ease the tension. Let the really violent prisoners out, so they can be violent outside prison, and then we can recall them again, but only for a month. Here's what Shabana Mahmood said.
Today, I am announcing a measure that will target the recall population, which has more than doubled in 7 years. We will bring legislation in the coming weeks that means those serving sentences of between 1 and 4 years can only be returned to prison for a fixed 28-day period.
Help? I'm sorry, how is that going to help? You know, if you're only going to recall them for a smaller period than you would have recalled them for, the only thing that helps is the size of the vacancies inside the prison system. So it means that if you recall somebody for a month and then let them back out again, what happens if you have to recall them again? You go for another month. You know, 1 month in, 1 month out. I mean, that's how it's going to end up, isn't it? How do they not see how useless these policies are? Morning, Mike, says Stuart. If they need to make room in prisons, why not let out all of those that should never have been in there in the first place? Like those that wrote something potentially hurtful or that the government didn't like. And more specifically, Peter says from Croydon, here's an opportunity to release Lucy Connolly. Well, you would think so. And Nick says, Starmer and Reeves look like a couple of Thunderbirds. When they're talking about the theme park. It really is. We'll play you Rachel Reeves in the next hour. It really is quite extraordinary. Breaking news this morning is the economy grew by 0.7% in the first quarter of this year. But price rises, I'm afraid, are going to dwarf any kind of benefit you might get from anything like that. This is Morning Glory. Bye.
I think the whole conversation has changed. You know, some of us have got scars on our backs from fighting for this stuff for years and years, years in which it was not just unfashionable, but completely taboo to be aggressively questioning and challenging the scale of uncontrolled immigration. You know, those of us that have been at the forefront of this political debate have been called every name under the sun, and that's fine. We're used to it. You stick your neck out, you've got to be ready.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of common sense. So we've got lots going on this morning, an awful lot to do, an awful lot to talk about. Peter Conradi is here, Europe editor of the Sunday Times. We're going to talk about the peace talks in Turkey currently going on. Vladimir Putin not going to those. Donald Trump, however, still speaking. He's speaking today, right now, live in Doha. Here he is in Qatar.
like the Crown Prince a lot. I've known him a long time in Saudi Arabia, and the Emir is fantastic. And we're going to another country in a little while, UAE, a fantastic man, fantastic leader. And they have great leadership talents in this part of the world, and that's why they're doing so well. And you probably read today the story about Iran has sort of agreed to the terms. They're not going to make, I call it in a friendly way, nuclear dust. We're not going to be making any nuclear dust in Iran. And we've been strong. I want them to succeed. I want them to end up being a great country, frankly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. That's the only thing. It's very simple. It's not like I have to give you 30 pages worth of details. There's only one sentence: they can't have a nuclear weapon. And I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal without having to do this. There's two steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. The violence like people haven't seen before. And I hope we're not going to have to do this. I don't want to do the second step. Some people do. Many people do. I don't want to do that step. So we'll see what happens. But we're in very serious negotiations with Iran for long-term peace. And if we do that, it'll be fantastic. And for this country in particular, because you're right next door. You're a stone's throw away, not even, right? You're a foot away. You can walk right into Iran. Other countries are much further away, so probably it's not quite the same level of danger. But we are going to protect this country. It's a very special place with a special royal family, and the head of the royal family is two heads of the royal family, really, if you think. Great people. And they're going to be protected.
Donald Trump speaking in Doha there, and he's in Qatar as part of this quite remarkable Middle East tour. And if you saw any of them, we'll try and show you some of the footage from last night at the royal dinner that was hosted for him when he was sort of heralded in by a group of men on horseback. You know, we had the sort of the Cybertruck parade earlier in the day when he was in Saudi Arabia. It's quite remarkable what's going on, really. Peter Conradi is here, the Europe editor of the Sunday Times. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, we're going to talk about the peace talks, even though they're probably not going to perhaps come to very much, given that Putin's not going and Trump doesn't appear to be going now either. I mean, watching Donald Trump, it's so, you might not use the same words as I would use, but it's sort of refreshing to see him dealing with people in such a different way. It's almost like we've never seen anything like it, really.
Yeah, I mean, refreshing. Yeah, I mean, refreshing in a way. Extraordinary, I think. I mean, if you think of the usual kind of previous American presidents' visits to these regions, it's very formal. It's very kind of stylized. It's all sort of following this old kind of script. Whereas here he comes and sort of there's always praise for the local leaders in very, very personal terms. It's clear that he's impressed by them. And I mean, you can actually say, well, yes, he's right. It is simple. It does boil down with Iran to, we don't want you to make nuclear weapons. You don't, as he put, you don't need 20 pages or 30 pages to say that. So, yeah, I sort of agree with you, actually.
Yeah. And I mean, and watching it, I mean, I was sort of struck by this cyber, kind of motorcade that we were watching, and the only thing that was missing was the sort of the Darth Vader theme tune, really, wasn't it? I mean, it was so theatrical and so kind of, here he comes, the big guy, and I mean, I say refreshing just because and because he's actually getting things done. I mean, I know his enemies will say, oh, it's all performative, it's all about making money. It doesn't really matter, and if he's achieving what he appears to be achieving, then it's got to be worthwhile, isn't it?
Well, it's a different approach, isn't it? I mean, you've got all these intractable conflicts in the world, and in a sense, conventional diplomacy has not really dealt with them. I mean, whether Trump has actually succeeded so far in actually dealing with any of these problems is another question. But I mean, he's giving it a try, so
yeah,
why not?
Certainly
really?
When Biden gave a load of money back to Iran and freed up from the sanctions, they went and bought a load of drones from wherever it was, Russia or China, and decided to lob them all at Israel. So that wasn't the greatest idea that anybody ever had either.
No, that didn't go that well, did it?
No, exactly right. And what about this peace process in Turkey now? Because the fact that there even is one, I suppose, is a good thing, but without any of the major players.
Yeah, I mean, basically the problem is that it's Putin. I mean, obviously Putin is the problem, but Putin wants to appear to the Americans. He wants to get in with the Americans. He wants to give the impression that he wants peace. But fundamentally, he doesn't, or he really just wants it on his terms. And his terms are having a Ukraine which is completely emasculated, which is neutral, which can never join NATO, is weakened, and is there for when Putin wants to have another go at it. And the trouble is he has to somehow square this circle of he wants to get in with the Americans, he wants to do deals with the Americans want to do deals with him. But there is just this fundamental problem at the heart of it that Ukraine and Russia cannot agree on a way forward. And despite all this toing and froing, I don't quite see how they're going to agree on one.
No, I mean, it's seemingly an intractable situation, isn't it? Because, you know, this idea that you kind of leave Crimea kind of hanging and nobody's really sure who owns it, but Russia kind of controls it but doesn't, you know, that Zelensky kind of still has it as part of his country but doesn't, and nobody's very sure if that's where it's all going to end. I mean, that's kind of where it is at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I think Crimea is not the Ukrainians accept that they're not going to get Crimea back. They realize they're not going to get Crimea back, but they just can't bring themselves officially to say it. So they can accept it in practice, but they can't accept it legally.
But it's like they can accept Russia occupies it, but they don't want it to be part of Russia. That's the intractable bit, isn't it?
Precisely. And the problem is that it is part of Russia now because Putin formally made it part of Russia 10 years ago. Yeah. And so, again, for the Russians, they can't accept a situation where the Ukrainians don't accept that the Russians have got it, if you follow me. And it's just, you know, it's just a big circle, really.
Right. It's weird. Well, we'll keep our eyes on it. Good to talk to you, Peter, as ever. Thank you. Peter Conradi, Europe editor at the Sunday Times. One from Paul in Fife. Morning, Mike. Listening to Donald Trump, I'm even more convinced he's one of the great 3 American presidents, and very possibly the greatest ever. I wish to God we had him here. Jason in Romford, the economy growing by 0.07% in the first quarter has everything to do with companies and people making the most of the previous tax year. You watch the second and third quarter tank, it's going to be horrific. I think it is 0.7% though, isn't it? It's not 0.07%. Yeah, 0.7%. Still not very much, but that is the bottom line. Regarding the prisons, says John in Yorkshire, particularly the new prisons, they've been in the works for 5 years. I should know. I've been working on their implementation. We're going to move on, John. Come on, we've got plenty more people to get into the prisons. So if you're in charge of it, I want to hear more from you. I want a daily update. You know, what have you laid the foundations, fixing the foundations? You know, have you put the bars up yet? You know, have you got the doors on? Come on. Tell us what's going on. In the next hour, we've got loads going on. Peter Hitchens is going to be joining us. We'll find out what he's up to this week. And also, we're going to find out what Cami Badenoch has written about in The Sun this morning. Very, very good stuff. This is Morning Glory. We'll be back after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham. The day is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. If you're only just getting up, where have you been? We've been gone for 2 hours on this Home of Common Sense, and we are here every single weekday morning from 6 a.m. To 10 a.m. I know some of you are listening in other parts of the world as well, so for you it's a different time zone and all of that. We're keeping an eye on Donald Trump. He's speaking in Doha right now. Later on, he's going to be going to he's going to be going to Abu Dhabi, I believe, next on his sort of tour of the Middle East. He's making quite a lot of waves there, but talking about peace with Iran, talking about the Russians having to get on with peace with Ukraine, having to talk about the Israelis having to get on with peace somehow in Gaza. You know, it's a remarkable trip, it's a remarkable tour, and it's like nothing anybody, I think, has ever seen before from any American president. We're talking not only about that, of course. Keir Starmer's off on his travels as well, while David Lammy's gone to Turkey to see what he can do. Not very much, I suspect, with peace in Ukraine. We've got Keir Starmer going off to Albania today because he wants to try and do some kind of deal with a third country whereby we can resolve the migrant problem, where we can send failed asylum seekers to a third country. Well, you know what? Somebody else had that idea a while back. Only the country they wanted to send people to was Rwanda. When Keir Starmer got into power, he was still very much pro-immigration, so he cancelled that deal without further ado, and it went into the long grass. And now Donald Trump might actually be using Rwanda as a stopping-off point for migrants as well. So instead, he wants to look at Albania, wants to look at Montenegro, he wants to look at Serbia, he wants to look at Bosnia, and all these countries from the former Yugoslavia that might take some migrants. My suggestion is, why don't we empty the jails of our foreign criminals, including all the Albanians, and take them to Albania with him. 0344 499 1000. We've been talking about Gary Lineker as well. This from Rich in Northamptonshire. I'm a Palace supporter. I'm looking forward to the FA Cup final on Saturday, but that idiotic non-entity Lineker will be presenting it on the BBC, so I, for one, will boycott their coverage and watch it on ITV. You can probably listen to it on Talk Sport as well, so don't forget to do that. Loads more to do as well. We're going to be talking about the NHS because they apparently are refusing to button down and do what they're told when it comes to obeying the law. NHS offers treatment to trans toddlers, is what it says on the front page of the Telegraph. Under 7s are being seen by specialist gender clinics as guidance is altered. That's in the wake, of course, of the Supreme Court ruling. They're also still guaranteeing that trans women will be able to use women's-only spaces, particularly changing rooms and toilets, which seems to me to be thoroughly and utterly against the law. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Lots of other stories going on, including the Universal theme park in jeopardy because there's a load of travellers who live on the site who aren't moving. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6 minutes past 8. Another story that's doing the rounds this morning. Jill Biden ran the White House from behind the scenes, shutting down conversations about her husband's mental decline, according to a new book just being published in the United States called Original Sin. The former First Lady is said to have wielded unprecedented power in the administration, completing the former president's thoughts and refusing to hear any criticism of his abilities or indeed his political judgment. Well, let's just remind ourselves, as we watch Donald Trump striding around in the Middle East, of what Joe Biden was actually like.
She knows so long as she was denied, our freedom can never be secured.
Yes. It's hard to imagine that he was once the President of the United States of America and that was how he sounded. And here's what Keir Starmer said about Joe Biden when he went to visit him.
They're implying that President Biden is senile. Is he?
No, we had a really good bilateral yesterday. We were billed for 45 minutes. We went on for the best part of an hour. We went through a huge number of issues at pace. He was actually on really good form.
Yeah, well, apparently, according to a new book, that's all cobblers. What can I say? A politician not getting it quite right, or possibly telling the odd porky. Peter Hitchens is here, columnist at the Mail on Sunday. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I've been struck this day by the contrast, I suppose you might say, in what Joe Biden was and what Donald Trump is. I know you're not a massive fan of Donald Trump, but what he's doing in the Middle East does seem to be quite unprecedented.
Well, it's unprecedented in that the world has changed. The huge change over the past 10 years has been the extraordinarily clever tactical manoeuvring of Benjamin Netanyahu and to get Saudi Arabia on his side by making Iran his principal enemy. That has had big short-term benefits for him in having better relations with that part of the Muslim world, while having much worse relations with the Iranian Shia-dominated part of the Muslim world. I don't know how that will end, but that's a lot of the basis of what's going on now. But the friendship between the United States and Saudi Arabia goes back to 1945, when Franklin Roosevelt carpeted one of his warships with carpets, and indeed I think installed camels on them so that he could meet King Ibn Saud of Saudi Arabia and propose a long-term alliance, which made Winston Churchill grind his teeth because he was trying to get the same thing.
Yeah.
There's nothing particularly new in that.
No, there isn't. I mean, but I mean, I thought of you yesterday when I saw the new Syrian leader, who's still categorised as a terrorist in the United States of America.
Oh my goodness!
Shaking the hand of Donald Trump, and I thought of you, and I thought of the IRA. I don't know why.
Well, it's again the posturing and hypocrisy of particularly of the United States and this country, who go on and on for years and years about some particular terrorist group, and then find themselves having dinner with them and giving them money, and here we are again. And what we have effectively done in Syria is installed an Al Qaeda government.
Yeah.
And everyone's fallen very quiet about it. I don't know what's going on in Syria, really, because the reporting from there is pretty inadequate. But I really wouldn't like, for instance, to be a Christian Arab in Syria at the moment, let alone an Alawite. No, and yet but people have fallen silent about this. People are constantly telling us what a wicked regime the Assad regime was, which it was.
Yeah.
And there's no question about that. But we consort, as you see now, with all kinds of wicked regimes. For goodness sake, Saudi Arabia remains, for all the cosmetic reforms and the treatment of women and so forth, it remains one of the worst despotisms in the world. And it's never really got over the murder in the most horrific way of one of its most prominent dissidents, poor Mr. Khashoggi, who was both murdered and then dismembered in a Saudi consulate. No one doubts that was the work of the government which Donald Trump's been consorting with. So the whole structure of moralizing and claiming to be on the side of freedom and law in the Middle East doesn't stand a moment's examination, and I just get very tired of the way in which grown-up people. I understand why naive and ill-informed people can fall for this, because they have very limited sources of information, but the number of politicians and senior media figures who allow this stuff to go past them without criticizing it is completely astounding and really rather embarrassing for our trade.
But is it not really rather about kind of what you might call sort of willful forgetfulness, or, you know, the ignoring of facts, or just the disputation of history? They don't want to remember what was before because it's a bit embarrassing. So they sort of wipe the slate clean and go, it's a bit like Keir Starmer with his immigration speech on Monday, pretending that he's now anti-immigration, which everybody believes is untrue.
Well, again, the style of behaviour is profoundly disgraceful because of the blatant dishonesty of it. And if you really had previously had principles on this, which certainly a lot of New Labour people claimed they were principled on the matter of migration, they regarded opposition to immigration as an evil and sordid position, which they've now adopted. Well, I don't see how they can remain in public life after doing a U-turn of that size. It's just not possible to claim to be a serious person if you reverse your position, quite obviously for political gain, to such an extent. And I'm sorry, there just isn't anything left of anybody who does that. Has he been through a dark night of the soul, or has he been through a dark night of the polls? I think it's a dark night of the polls. In this business of the Middle East, again, I understand that it's necessary for our government to keep this country ultimately safe, to have dealings with unpleasant foreign regimes, and everybody knows that you will have to do this if you want, and that's the ultimate purpose of foreign policy, to keep your people safe and to keep them prosperous. Then you will have to deal with horrible people. Don't, while you're doing so, pretend to be mounting a principled, ethical foreign policy. That's all I ask. And the way in which the attacks on the Assad regime were couched, and the way in which support was given quite blatantly to the al-Nusra Front, which everybody knew was an al-Qaeda front organization. And the result of this now, in that Syria has basically an al-Qaeda government, and everybody's crawling to it. And the aid which Syria has so badly needed, since we reduced so much of it to rubble with our intervention, is now flowing to this person. But they would not, for several years after the war had come to a sort of end, they would not countenance any aid to Syria. People were living in the ruins of the place with no aid from the West allowed. Now it's flowing. What is this? Kindly explain to me how it is that Al-Qaeda, the organization we were told from September the 11th, 2001, for years and years and years to hate and fear and loathe, is suddenly our friend.
Yeah, it's very confusing.
It's beyond me, and you cannot, as I say, why should you listen in future to anybody whose principles, if they exist, are so shallow and so easily altered by shifts in power? Either you meant it, or you didn't mean it. If you didn't mean it, do you mean anything you say now? And should we try? So much of our discourse is based on this moralizing. Much of our discourse, I should say, about Russia is based on similar moralizing. Yes, of course, the Putin regime is a revolting despotism, which nobody can defend. But that doesn't stop us dealing with Saudi Arabia. It doesn't stop us dealing with China. It doesn't stop us dealing with Egypt. So can we please stop pretending that is our motivation in this case?
But isn't this why also so many people have disillusioned with mainstream two-party politics, and they just they don't believe a word of what either the Tory party or the Labour Party say? When Tory ministers, former ministers, get up and talk to me on this show, or they talk in Parliament about, you know, Labour doing nothing to stop the immigration crisis, I mean, everybody just falls about laughing, because they go, well, you basically encouraged the immigration crisis from 2019 on. It got worse, much worse, under Boris Johnson and then under Rishi Sunak. So for them to say, well, we're going to fix it if you give us another chance, nobody believes it.
It's totally dangerous. And for years and years and years, through unprincipled behaviour and the making of promises they never intended to keep, political leaders of both major parties have drawn on the well of trust in this country, and it's now empty. Yeah. And when people cease to trust their political leaders, then all kinds of horrible things become possible. And I fear very much for the whole future of law-governed democracy in this country. And one of the main reasons, if it falls, and one of the main reasons it will fall, will be precisely because so many unprincipled people have used the trust of the voters over and over again to promise things which they never intended to deliver, and to claim to hold positions they didn't truly hold. Yeah. And ultimately, to begin with, people long to trust authority. This is, again, in the Lucy Letby case, one of the reasons why so many people are so reluctant to believe that she was sent to prison on the basis of nothing, is they want to trust the police. They want to trust the courts. If we live in a society where the police and the courts can't be trusted, then we live in anarchy, don't we?
Well, that's right.
You want to believe in it, just as you want to believe that your political leaders know what they're doing and mean what they say. But if they carry on behaving in this fashion for long enough, then people will begin to say, well, why should we have anything like this anymore? And the desire for some sort of strong state and some sort of great leader will grow among people. And I don't think that as I say, the freedom and the law-governed democracy which we've had for so long can endlessly survive this misbehaviour by the people who live at the top of it.
Yeah, and as you say, particularly if they say one thing and do something completely different. And we had a lot of people talking to us yesterday about the heat pump situation. Lots of people getting heat pumps installed in their homes, many more than I would ever have thought. And I asked the question, how is it so many people are falling for the heat pump garbage and swallowing the propaganda? And it's exactly as you say, because they want to believe the people telling them that these things are good are actually telling the truth, when of course they're not.
I know people who are doing it, and they're lovely people, and they're principled people who genuinely believe that they're saving the planet.
Yeah.
By causing themselves all this disruption and digging and immense expense for a device which, when it's all over, won't heat their home properly. No. But they genuinely believe it, what they've been told. And when the disillusion kicks in, how bad is it going to be?
Yeah. It's going to be awful, and it's astonishing that we seem to have arrived at this point in where, if you tell the truth, you're painted as some kind of strange creature that obviously isn't with the great role of society, and you're some kind of outlier because you're a bit eccentric and possibly mad, and maybe some kind of conspiracy theorist, just because you don't go along with the PR.
Well, the whole term conspiracy theorist was invented to diminish and marginalise people who didn't fit in with the mainstream. It doesn't really mean anything. And there are lots of conspiracies which take place every day in London between journalists and politicians, for instance, and they're called lunch.
Yes.
So they're private meetings which nobody admits to having taken place, of which people get together to pursue an objective which they don't want other people to know they have. Well, that's a conspiracy. It's not a load of people in Guy Fawkes hats in a tavern in Deptford plotting to stab somebody. It's what people do all the time. They get together and pursue secret ends without letting people know what they're doing. And to believe that doesn't take place is, frankly, to be a naive idiot.
Yes.
So everybody who's got any sort of idea what's going on could be jeered at as a conspiracy theorist. It really isn't a term anybody should pay any attention to. And yet it is still, in this society of trust, an extremely good way of marginalising dissent. And generally, the moment you're called a conspiracy theorist, you're on the back foot.
Yeah, exactly right. And well, long may it continue, I suppose. I mean, I still avoid as many of those types of lunches as I ever did. I hope you do as well. Good to see.
Used to do them a lot in the 1980s, and that's when I learned how it all works.
Yes.
And I know that it still goes on. So whenever I see a story in the newspaper, I think, who's been lunching with who?
Very true. Peter Hitchens, thank you very much indeed. Columnist at the Mail on Sunday. Let's get a voice note from Damon on Albania.
Morning, Mike. Damon from Wigan. I'd just like to say that Keir Starmer going over to Albania today will be a complete waste of time. It's going to cost the British taxpayer again more money with the deal that he turns up with. There'll be absolutely no conditions with this deal, and nothing will change as regards sending anybody back to Albania. In fact, the chances are we'll be bringing more over here to the UK rather than sending more back.
Yeah, because of course Keith Starmer, the chief negotiator of nothing, he'll end up, having his pocket picked. He'll think that he's doing a deal that's going to be beneficial to the United Kingdom, and he'll end up not being at all beneficial to the United Kingdom. And as Damon just said there, he'll probably end up taking more people back in to the country than he is actually sending out. One here from Chris. Why is that weasel Lineker not being arrested for that vile hate post with the rat? It's a good question. Glyn in Catterick says, sorry, but after listening to David Lammy's speech, in inverted commas, and Starmer's last efforts, I just cannot take this government seriously. Then there's Trump, who just explained things in layman's terms, and he achieves things. Great show. Thank you very much indeed. Martin in County Durham says, watching Trump on his Middle Eastern tour is absolutely amazing. He's certainly in for a shock when he gets here for his state visit. If it ever happens, it'll be protests and crime all over the place, and then down to the Elephant and Castle for a pint and some jellied eels. What a mess this country looks. Well, you never know. He might not bother going into London. He might just head straight to Windsor or Balmoral, because he's only really interested in seeing the royal family. He's not really that interested in hanging about with Starmer, I don't think. This, of course, is the home of common sense. Coming up, we'll take more of your calls. We'll talk to Martina Bett from The Sun. Kerry Badenoch's written for them today, all about how Starmer's about to give away the store to the European Union.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, as a member of parliament, you are gifted loads of things. You are genuinely told that there are certain things that you're able to keep, and you don't have to declare it if it's worth less than £300. I think about £300. So what's interesting is that it does really reveal the absolute lavish nature of a lot of what these members of parliament get. And I think what we have to be very clear about is any member of parliament that claims that they are hard done by, that the £80,000 or £90,000 now that members of parliament get as a salary, that's not all the benefits that they receive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 23 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of common sense, and we're talking a great deal of it this morning. I like Peter Hitchens, says Chris, but I believe Trump is trying to get peace, and we need to move forward and hopefully get this world a better place. Sarah in West Sussex says, hi, Mike, is Lammy getting a taxi to Ukraine? Well, you never know with him, do you? He likes a long taxi ride. There's a bit of dispute going on at the moment between him and a taxi driver and the authorities in France, in Switzerland, and, of course, in Italy because of a taxi journey he took when he was with the good old king of this country making a visit. John in Bexley Heath says, Mike, I'm all in favour of one in, one out rare illegal immigrants. One illegal in, one French fishing boat out. Give it 2 days and this problem is sorted. Keith would never do it. Well, of course, there is an EU summit coming up in Britain next week. This week, there's a summit going on in Tirana in Albania, and Keir Starmer's gone out there, as indeed has Harry Cole, political editor at The Sun, who's in Tirana for us right now. Harry, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. It's very sunny here.
I was going to say, how are things in Tirana? It looks like a nice part of the world.
It is. I don't know why everyone wants to leave it. It's actually it's actually glorious. No, lovely sunny weather, lovely good, nice local wine, good food. It's I don't know what the fuss is about.
Yeah, absolutely right. I was saying earlier that Keir Starmer was looking for a third place, like a hub to take people. He's hoping that the Albanians will go along, but they've had deals offered like this to them before. The Italians have been trying to do a deal. Piece you wrote this morning says that's been bogged down with difficulty. So how is this deal going to be structured, would you think?
Well, that is the $1 million question. I think it's Keir Starmer, Mr. Human Rights, isn't going to do anything that is deemed illegal, anything that seems to break international law. So it's looking for a way around that. The Italians have a deal where they send failed asylum seekers here. They've sent about 50 so far, and it's looking like a situation probably like Rwanda would have ended up in if it had been carried on, where some international court is about to order them to bring them back. So it's a bit of a farce. So everyone's looking at Italy and seeing how it's going, whether it works and whether there is potential there. It might not just be Albania, it might be slightly wider, the region. But it's certainly something the government are looking at, but it's very much looking at it in the view that it has to be legally watertight or Keir Starmer won't touch it.
I was hoping he might have started with removing some of those Albanian criminals in our prison system. Now that we've got a prison crisis going on apparently as well, and they're letting loads of people out, he could have taken a load of Albanian prisoners with him, couldn't he?
Yeah. So the Albanian prisoners and criminals are, a significant number of them in UK jails. A lot of them have been sent back. They did strike a deal with Albania. The last government, Rishi Sunak had. So 95% of the Albanians who've crossed over do get sent back automatically now because essentially they have a deal that if you are Albanian and you land in Britain, you try to claim asylum or you try to come here, you just get sent back to Albania immediately, which is a very effective deterrent. And actually numbers of Albanians crossing illegally into the UK is actually significantly down. Yeah. So more of that would be good, but it's a very tricky situation. Obviously, he's here. Prime Minister's here as the first British Premier to ever visit Albania, actually. And he's having chats and talks today with the Albanians. And tomorrow, the wider European community, this thing called the EPC, which Macron set up, actually Liz Truss signed us up to in one of the brief moments of her premiership, which is the EU plus. It's the EU plus to the people in the EU's orbit, like the UK, like Albania, like other Balkans countries. So I think migration's on the agenda for that as well. So I suspect today they'll be teeing up what they want to discuss, and then obviously the Europeans are coming to London on Monday. So for all the illegal migration chit chat that they're having here at the back end of this week, next week they're back onto legal migration, because before the EU will sign anything up like a defence deal or relaxing trade on goods, they're going to insist that Starmer agrees to take tens of thousands of younger Europeans, under 40s, like myself, Mike.
Not for long.
Under 40s who would be essentially returned for free movement to allow them to work and study in Europe. Brits would be able to go to Europe, but as we found out, when we were members of the European Union, it's much more of a one-way street if people wanted to come here. Yeah. And as we found out, 6 million Europeans settled, and they only realised that 3 were there. So when they start talking about small limited numbers and things, red flags should be waved.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just seeing that Italy and Denmark are also kind of conspiring together to try and get the EU to reshape the ECHR and to take less notice of it, basically, effectively saying it's no longer fit for purpose when it comes to immigration in Europe.
Well, listen, look, everyone's has the same problems. This isn't a unique problem to Britain. Yes, we have the unique situation of the Channel, and obviously the visual element of that, of the sort of complete incompetence and impotence of the government, that they are unable to stop people sort of breaking into the country across the Channel. But every country is facing this issue of surging migration and what to do about it. And they're all confined and caught within the bounds of legislation and treaties that were written for a different age. The UN Refugee Convention, written in the 1950s, the ECHR, was written in one sense, after the Second World War, but it's been a sort of evolving, emerging, sort of almost organic, living mantra that has just got more and more complex. And so I think actually across Europe, look at what's happening in France, look what's happening in Germany, a tilt towards the right, look what's happening in Scandinavia. These questions need to be answered, and I think the easiest and quickest way to do it is for people to work together, and that's how it's going to happen. The Italians, have no truck with the ECHR, as we mentioned earlier. They're getting bogged down on things they're trying. So I think a tipping point is being reached where eventually even Mr. Human Rights, even left-leaning Labour Party are going to have to say, look, you know what, this is nuts. Let's sort this out. But Starmer will only get involved if it is in conjunction with other people, and he'll only get involved if it's to the letter of the law. So, but I suspect that's going to put him in a tricky bind, because it's ironic, really, that this man that has been made his name and made his career as a human rights lawyer is going to have to be the one that starts tackling and breaking down human rights laws in this country. So whether he's got the stomach to do it, well, we'll have to wait and see, won't we?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been a great week for him. I mean, I don't know if you saw Prime Minister's questions yesterday, but when he was rather rude to Liz Saville-Roberts from Plaid Cymru, who asked him a question about whether he keeps any of his actual beliefs longer than, a day in Downing Street, Angela Rayner's face when he answered her was really a picture. Clearly, she's not keen on the immigration policy that he's announced, and she's not keen on him talking to women like that.
No, exactly. Look, both figures today, I think, will come as some relief. Obviously, I think the trade deal with India was, had its moments, had its ups and downs. The US stuff, I think they'll be very pleased with. But look, he's in a tricky spot, and he's got MPs who are looking to Angela Rayner, MPs that are looking at their seats and thinking, what was the point of this massive majority if we're not going to do all these nice left-wing things? Instead, we're going to have to do all these horrible, mean things about immigration. And I suspect he's going to have a bit more rebellion. He's got a few rebellions on his hands already on benefit reforms and the like. He's finding it tough.
Absolutely. One final question from Kev, who's asked me to ask you this. Has Harry tried the chicken nuggets yet? He says.
I haven't tried the chicken nuggets, but I will report back whether they are sufficient to for criminals' children to eat.
Excellent. Great stuff. Well, listen, thank you very much indeed, Harry. I know you're a busy man. Appreciate it. Harry Cole there, this goes with The Sun, live from Tirana in Albania, where the Prime Minister is going to be today, trying to do a deal with the Albanians about possibly offshoring some of the migrants from here, who may not even be from Albania. But let's talk to Martina Bett now, political correspondent of The Sun, because also today in The Sun on page 10, Kemi Badenoch, Conservative Party leader, is writing about Starmer's surrender in the EU reset. Martina, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Thanks very much for joining us. You heard from Harry Cole there just now about how this European reset is affecting not only the UK, but it's affecting Italy, it's affecting Denmark. There's a lot of other countries that are sort of trying to move themselves around, whether it's about immigration, whether it's about free movement, whatever it is. It feels like there's something changing in the whole relationship between all the countries in the EU, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it's very interesting that there have been reports overnight about the meeting that Keir Starmer's got tomorrow in Tirana.
Yeah.
And basically, Brussels blindsided number 10 with last-minute demands for more fish, for free tuition. And, you know, EU leaders want long-term access to our British waters. It's not a surprise. And as you said, Kemi Badenoch has written at page 10 in The Sun newspaper today, saying that basically being open to all of this and going to the EU with waving the white flag is not going to do them any favours.
No, because what we know historically from the EU is that every time you give them something, they ask for something else. You know, up until, as you said just the other day, the belief was that, you know, here's some fishing rights that you can have, and we'll have some freedom of movement for people under 40. But now they're demanding, you know, more conditions, more, you know, friendly terms. They want, I think, the tuition fees to be lowered for kids coming from the EU to come and study here. And they want yet more fishing rights. And if he gives those, then they'll ask for something else, no doubt.
Absolutely. And I think that's the point that Kemi Badenoch was making, is that if we're seen desperate to please or to reset relations, no matter the cost, you know, it signals to the EU that we're going to accept 4 terms, that, you know, they invite Brussels to demand even more, knowing Starmer is just, you know, unlikely to walk away from the negotiations because he's desperate to show, you know, we know that economic growth is at the centre of his plans, that he's got to show that the economy is growing. And he thinks that unless we smooth trade with the European Union, he's unlikely to achieve that. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens on Monday. It's very interesting to see what comes out of this meeting tomorrow, the European political community in Tirana tomorrow. But, you know, in the piece that Kemi wrote for us, she talks about different things, from fishing rights to the EU Youth Mobility Scheme that we know that the European Commission is really keen for Keir Starmer to sign. And there have been lots of different reports, because until a few months ago, Keir Starmer's government was saying that they had no plans to sign up to this Youth Mobility Scheme. And in the last couple of weeks, things have very much changed. And it seems like we are going to open the door to lots of young Europeans. And, you know, the Tories have already said it's looking like it's going to be freedom of movement by the back door.
Right, that's what she's saying, because she points out, as we've been doing for quite some time, that it won't just be people coming from, you know, what you might call traditional European cities and towns. It will be people coming from places like Bulgaria, Romania, some asylum seekers possibly who have been handed fast-track access to German citizenship. So, you know, everybody knows what will actually end up happening. And it will be people saying they're coming here to study, but who actually won't be coming here to study.
Absolutely. And I think it will also be interesting to see what the Home Office says about this, because we know that there's been quite a lot of friction with the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, about this youth mobility scheme, which is something that we know the Treasury is really keen on. But the Home Secretary, who's been given the job of reducing net migration, and we've seen the white paper earlier on this week, does not want that, because she knows perfectly well that if the Keir Starmer's government fails to reduce net migration, well, the next election is pretty much already written.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely right. Great to talk to you, Martina. Thank you very much indeed. Martina Bett, political correspondent at The Sun, talking to us about page 10 in the paper today, which is, of course, Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party leader, writing about Starmer's upcoming surrender, which I think is pretty much what you're going to see, to the European Union. Not accepting the terms of agreement that they made before. The EU, of course, is asking for more, and there's a pretty good chance Starmer will give it to them. Coming up, we'll talk to Stephen Wolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Let's get a voice note first, though, from Steve.
Morning, Mike. This is Stephen Harts. Hope you're well this morning, my friend. Let's not forget that the BBC is still using Joe Biden to make hit pieces on President Trump. It's absolutely incredible, the bias that lot show, using this poor, demented old man.
Yeah, well, that's the BBC for you. I mean, what did you expect? David says this: for once, can we put Lineker in his place? He was a footballer, and that's it. And like other footballers, if they weren't footballers, they'd be doing very little. More articulate than most, yes, but nevertheless, he was just a footballer and nothing else. Yeah, absolutely right. 8:37.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:38. I'm Mike Graham, and this is, of course, the home of Common Sense, with you until 10 o'clock when Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. One from Phil, who says, Mike, sorry, I can't tell the difference between Joe Biden and Keir Starmer. It's all meaningless garbage. And one from Phil in Hearts, who says, morning, Mike. Listening to your guests, some think that by attempting to tackle immigration, voters will back Labour. No, they will say, thanks very much indeed for what you've done, but no, we're voting reform as you are a bunch of liars. I think that's right. And Graham in Wrexham says, Mike, I would never lend my voice to Plaid Cymru, but his reaction, Starmer's reaction to the question that was put by the MP was disgraceful. Is this what he meant when he advocated for the programme Adolescence, the example we need to set to our young boys? Well, that's indeed true. Let's get a voice note from Paula.
Morning, Mike. Oh, if I hear Keir Starmer say one more time, we are delivering at pace, I'm going to go mad. What pace? Pace of a snail. Nothing happens in this country. We've been saying for years we want to stop the boats, stop the migrants. Nothing happens. What sort of pace is he talking about? He's starting to crack me up. I'm going bonkers. Thanks, Mike. Paula in Liverpool.
Paula in Liverpool. Listen, don't go bonkers. Stay with the home of Common Sense. We'll keep you sane. We'll do our very level best. I promise you that. But it is infuriating. I know exactly how you feel. Susan is in Gloucestershire. Susan, very good morning.
Morning.
Morning. What can you tell us, Susan?
Well, my daughter has a small independent fish and chip shop in Petbury in Gloucestershire.
Yeah.
And she's just heard from her suppliers for the fish that is £98 a kilo for 9 kilos at the moment. As soon as the new boats arrive with the new shipments, it's going up to £148 a kilo. 148,
so that's like a 50% increase?
Yes.
Unbelievable. And why have they said that's happening?
Well, they haven't made it. They just told her that that's going to be the price,
right?
And she has to pay it.
Yeah. And what will that mean?
Then the trouble is, people say, oh, well, you're putting it at the fish and chips up.
Yeah.
But what can you do?
Well, of course, absolutely. And so at the moment, can you say what the fish and chip price is in the shop at the moment?
I think it's not even £10, but
okay.
I can't remember, because luckily, Mike, I never have to pay.
Yes. No, I know, but that's one of the perks of having a daughter who's very good at business. But at the end of the day, though, Susan, she's got to put the price up, hasn't she? If it has to go above £10, that's so be it. And then that impacts on some people's ability to buy it, and they maybe won't buy it as often as they would in a month, that kind of thing. Yeah. It's bad for the economy. It's bad for everybody.
Well, it's like she said. If it had been like £20, or something like that, but it's going up, you know, from 98 to 148.
Extraordinary. That is extraordinary, and it's probably going to get worse as well if the French start nicking more of the fish. Susan, thank you very much indeed. What a fantastic piece of information that is. Let's talk to Stephen Wolfe now, Director at the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Stephen, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning.
Susan there talking about, because I was just talking apropos of not necessarily the European Union, but just in general, prices of everything going up. Warnings on the front page of the Eye this morning that food and drink prices are set to rise because of the national insurance contributions, new levies on packaging, drink spikes of sugar taxes and all of that. So more sort of government interference, if you like. Susan in Gloucestershire saying her daughter's fish and chip shop is now going to be charged £148 a kilo for fish instead of £98 for 9 kilos. I mean, that's a 50% increase. So what are people supposed to do who run businesses? And if we give more fishing rights to the French, presumably the price will go even higher.
Well, they will do, because they're effectively be giving a monopoly over large chunks between them and the Dutch, who take in most of the fish that comes in the large trawlers and then are dumped into our... in some cases, I understand that they're taken back to France, cleaned up or done whatever there, and then sent back over to England. Right. So I think that is really part of the cost implications, plus an environmental issue. But we've had costs being risen because of COVID. We had costs risen, particularly in fish. I know this because of the war with Ukraine and Russia, where we used to get a lot of fish and chips from Russia. And now we're getting the increased costs from this government. Every single part of our economy and our lives are being squeezed by government decisions, and very bad government decisions.
Yeah, the nanny state, which is actually now bigger than ever and gets bigger with every single passing day, is not successful, I don't think, and is not a model that we should be following. But what about old Starmer off today to Albania? The man who kiboshed the Rwanda scheme, whether you liked it or not, he didn't even give it a chance to work. He now thinks that a third hub country is a good idea, but maybe it should be Albania. I said this morning, if he'd been serious about this, I would have gone straight into all the prisons that we've got and taken all the Albanian criminals out, put them all in the back of lorries and driven them to Tirana and said, here you go, start with them.
Well, we've got a new pope. Maybe we've suddenly got a road to Damascus here from Keir Starmer. But I think it's more to a road to political saviour, because he has to try and protect his back from reform and the rise of Nigel Farage's party. The idea that suddenly you're able to go to Albania when he criticised it, then in Maloney in Italy, the courts there blocked her from going to Albania, saying it was a dodgy and dangerous country and you couldn't return people. But I do like that idea, though, Mike, that he should be going out there in the front of a lorry with the 1 in 10 of the foreign criminals are Albanian. I mean, that's a huge number of people coming over on the boats, getting into criminal gangs. You should take a lorry load over there, or a flotilla back to Albania, and see what they say then.
Yeah, exactly right. And also, it's going to end up like most of these deals that Starmer does, because he appears to be the worst negotiator in the world, and he appears to have bad, even worse negotiators as he takes with him. It's bound to end up with us paying them to take people from us. And we'll probably end up doing some kind of weird exchange with somebody to bring more people in.
Oh, my goodness me, it's not just Starmer. I mean, you look at the Foreign Office, my God, we've been paying over $500 million to the French, and we still haven't stopped the boats. But we've got some lovely camps, as Patrick Christie has recently been looking at when he's been over there. I mean, I went there in 2014, Mike, and they're still there today. So, we've got huge, poor deals there. The Foreign Office create poor deal with India, poor deal with America. Oh, my God, if we get an Albanian, they'll probably say, let's take 2 Albanians and we'll give you 1 back. How about that? And we'll throw in a Serb for good measure. Yeah.
I mean, it's insane, isn't it? And also, I mean, in terms of just the whole nonsense of his supposed road to Damascus conversion, I mean, Dan Hodges writing in the Mail today is saying, that's not true. We actually unearthed a video of him from 2020, which he says is the real Keir Starmer, where he talks about, the benefits of migration, that we should be pushing this more, that we should be welcoming more people into the country. That whole line that, migrants built Britain, and, we're better off with diversity and multiculturalism and all of the things that he's been spouting for his entire career until Monday, when he's suddenly now talking about an island of strangers. And I don't think anybody believes him. I haven't spoken to anyone in this entire land who believes a word of that speech on Monday.
It's like that rap song, will the real Keir Starmer please stand up, please stand up? Well, we know he's always sat down trying to appease all of those in the international legal community that love the idea of Davos rather than the nation state.
Right.
I mean, that's who he is. I mean, you could even look at his face. I would say, apart from the practicing of the hands, you know, of which you saw was all about Tony Blair, it's suddenly like watching the repeat of that.
Yeah.
There was a kind of blankness in his eyes when he said, trust me.
Yeah.
Because actually, no one really does, as you quite rightly say, because his history, the way they even started at the bar, when he founded his own chambers, it was all about ensuring that people that come across from foreign lands into this country could stay. That's how his promotion was so rapid.
Right. Well, he stopped many foreign criminals, quite dangerous ones at times, from even being deported, didn't he? You know, he signed all sorts of letters, added his name to petitions, you know, actually represented some of these people and prevented them from being sent out of this country when they should have been legally deported because of the crimes they'd committed. That's his MO. That's who he is.
It is, and I think it's very hard for him to suddenly turn around that, you know, he's becoming the Robert Jenrick of the Labour Party, you know, channeling Farage on strength of immigration policies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard just to take that part seriously. It's hard for him to say, look, I did this in my speech in 2024. No, actually, you didn't. You've been consistently opposing the Conservative government. You consistently done so as a lawyer. You consistently say so when you go off to your conferences at the Fabian Society and elsewhere. You are a man that believes firmly and fundamentally that the nation state should not really have control. And now you see that your political party may be destroyed or decimated by a party that challenges you on the very issue you actually despise. Now you've suddenly got this conversion. And I think it's very right that he's got to prove a lot more. He actually has to make them reduce. But I'm going to say to you, Mike, the con that he's got in there, and I put this on one of my tweets recently, there is a con. The numbers of people on net migration is going to come down. The OBR already said that last year. I've said that myself. I think it's going to settle around 500,000. They think it's 360. It was coming down anyway.
Yeah.
So during the course of this parliament, it would come down. He's going to say, look, I've done it. The reality is, has he got the boat people away? No. Has he got the criminals out? Has he got the legal migration numbers down? That'll be the key.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good to talk to you. Stephen Wolfe, thank you very much indeed. Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. My guess is he won't have got it down at all. Let's get a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here. I ain't got a lot to say today apart from this. Taxi for David Lammy, anyone? Great show, Mike.
Taxi for David Lammy. Irios says this, I'm a little confused. Were we paying for the taxi for Lammy to go on a personal skiing trip? Well, that's part of the confusion of the whole story. Nobody's really sure who's paid. If it's been paid, who paid it? And if there's a dispute over who paid it, why is there a dispute over who paid it? And which bit of that dispute are you going to believe? There's all sorts of stuff to talk about on that front. We'll come back to that because, of course, we're going to be speaking in the new hour. Next, after the news, Mel Stride is going to join us, Shadow Chancellor. He might have something to say about that. Coming up next, though, we're going to talk to Rear Admiral Chris Parry, former NATO commander.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, as a member of parliament, you are gifted loads of things. You are genuinely told that there are certain things that you're able to keep, and you don't have to declare it if it's worth less than £300. I think about £300. So what's interesting is that it does really reveal the absolute lavish nature of a lot of what these members of parliament get. And I think what we have to be very clear about is any member of parliament that claims that they are hard done by, that the £80,000 or £90,000 now that members of parliament get as a salary, that's not all the benefits that they receive.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:52. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Morning, Mike. When they say they're sending all the Albanians back, how do they know that all the men arriving on boats every day aren't all Albanians? They don't, says Mark in Southampton. Well, that's true. And the meeting with the Albanians will be us paying them to accept their own people back, says Bernie. Well, that's probably true as well. Let's talk now, though, to Rear Admiral Chris Parry, former NATO commander, a very sensible man. A couple of stories have crossed the desk this morning, Chris, which beggar belief, to be honest. I'm looking at a picture right now of a Falklands warship landing craft F8, which has been wrapped in the LGBTQ plus pride colours. And I just thought I said to myself and to Christian, my producer, can you imagine pitching up at D-Day and the D-Day landings at the start of, Saving Private Ryan in one of these things?
Well, Mike, we've got to stress this is a museum exhibit. It's actually a landing craft used to belong to a ship I commanded, actually, right. HMS Fearless. But it isn't in the Navy. It's not representative of the modern fighting service. We always believe in all of one company. We don't actually separate people out by political or other leanings. And frankly, this battle was fought and won 25 years ago when gays were openly allowed in the armed forces. Yeah. In fact, the first gay officer in the Navy was in my ship who was allowed to come out quite openly. So this is something that's been fought and won. The drum doesn't need banging anymore. It's quite divisive, I think. Nobody really recognises it anymore. No, I mean, I think the museums that we have in this country that house military, regalia and military vessels and things that have been used in previous battles are, substantial enough without having to sort of, modernise them in order for a new audience to appreciate them. I just think it's totally ridiculous. I mean, it comes at the same time as the Foreign Office is apparently in trouble because they flew the Bisexual Awareness Week flag without getting permission from Westminster City Council. And you think, well, why the hell are the Foreign Office flying that flag when they should be flying the Union flag? Well, there's all sorts of things, Mike, about, what are your priorities? There's quite a lot going on in the world. The Foreign Commonwealth Office really should be concentrating on that and actually having an information campaign that actually furthers British interests. This sort of token performance in Arson is not part really of the statecraft we want for this country. No, we really don't. I mean, at least we're not as bad as the Americans, though. We haven't lost any jets at sea. I don't know if you saw that story about the aircraft carrier in the Red Sea that made a sharp turn. And you're an expert in this, obviously being a former NATO commander and a Navy man. An extraordinary story that sort of happened last week, I know, of how they lost one of their, I think it was an F-16 that fell off the back of the aircraft carrier when they were moving it. Yeah, I mean, this does happen, Mike, especially with the Americans. They're operating at very high tempo out in the Red Sea at the moment. And you get situations where, you've got a very crowded flight deck. Unlike our aircraft carriers, which only have 8 jets on, of course, right. They've got about 90 jets on theirs. Yeah, that's a slightly different... And so, it's a pretty difficult parking space. So occasionally when they're manoeuvring under helm, it's going to happen. Yeah, amazing story. One final one for you. Hundreds of sailors on a £3.5 billion Royal Navy aircraft carrier, the HMS Queen Elizabeth, which I think is docked in Portsmouth right now, are being sent home to have showers because they haven't been able to get the showers to work, apparently with hot water, due to a lack of spare parts. Yeah, it's disgraceful, isn't it? This is the price you pay for having really sort of fragile supply chains. Yeah. When I joined the Navy a long time ago, just after the Mary Rosewood Commission, we actually used to make our own spares for this sort of thing, right. To tell you the truth. And it's a function of the fragility, as I said, of some of those supply chains. But I can tell you, Mike, when I was in the services, we had whole army barracks that didn't have showers and things like that. Right. They used to have to go down the local swimming pool to have a shower there. Some of the accommodation was so bad, this is 20 years ago now, and some of it's not much better. The soldiers actually went all the way down from Aldershot to South Wales to go home every night.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, I haven't seen a story like it for a while, but there was regular stories like that, certainly when I was in Fleet Street. I mean, it probably was 20 years ago, where terrible conditions for servicemen and women in these barracks. But is there any chance that the MOD's upped their game there?
Yeah, they need to. I mean, part of the problem, Mike, is we've contracted out so much of the infrastructure and services that getting sort of quality control on it according to service standards is incredibly difficult. You know, we're still getting these sorts of problems, not just in our warships, but also in the shore establishments as well. The politicians go through the motions all the time, saying how important our servicemen and veterans are. There's this military covenant that everybody signs up to, but I'm afraid to say, when it comes to action, there's nobody really in charge of seeing whether it's implemented or not. They really need somebody, a czar, if you like, to keep control of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they seem to have somebody decent with Alistair Cairns now in the Ministry of Defence. I mean, I've spoken to a few veterans who say he's actually not a bad guy. I don't know whether you know him, but is there?
I do know him. But, you know, I mean, he's done his military service. He's now a politician. You know, you and I can't help that he's gone to the dark side. You know, but I'm afraid we've got to assess our politicians by how effective they are in the role. He is a good guy. He's, you know, had a great military career. But I'm afraid he's got to be judged now on what he delivers and the company he keeps.
Yeah, well, we should keep a very close eye on it. Rear Admiral Chris Parry, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed, former NATO commander. Just a bit of breaking news that we got you a little bit earlier in the show. It is that the economy grew by 0.7% in the first quarter of the year. Rachel Reeves is speaking around about now, so we might hear something from her on that. But we'll talk to Mel Stride, who's the Shadow Chancellor, who's coming up very much in the next part of the show. Talking of breaking news as well, we've also been talking this morning about Joe Biden. There's a new book out called Original Sin, in which it basically claims that Jill Biden, Joe Biden's wife, was running the White House and effectively running America when Joe Biden was at the end of his tether, only really capable of being sort of propped up once in a while to be able to say anything that was vaguely sensible. Ian in Somerset says they only kept Biden because the other option to run America was Kamala Harris, and they thought that was probably worse. True. Joanna from Salisbury says, hi Mike, Biden, what was more frightening was there was a clip of Keir Starmer, which we played a bit earlier, saying there was nothing wrong with him, that he was fine. Another Starmer lie. Well, unfortunately, I mean, it's easier to find somewhere where Starmer's told the truth than it is to find a lie, because there are so many lies. Absolutely unbelievable. We'll be back, though. This is Morning Glory. Keep those calls coming in. 0344 499 1000. I'm Mike Graham. We'll be back after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump. on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9, and we are in the final hour of the show this morning. It's really gone quickly, even more quickly than it normally does. I can't tell you how grateful I am to all of you for all the great voice notes and all of the fantastic contributions that you make. We've been talking about a great many things, including the Universal theme park that they all got so excited about just a few weeks ago. It's looking as if it's now in a bit of jeopardy, because the front page of the Daily Star this morning is saying that there's a caravan site very, very close to where they want to build the Universal theme park, you know, the one that Keir Starmer was very excited to announce. And Rachel Reeves was also really pleased as well. So it turns out that the caravan site is occupied currently by some travellers who are not moving. Not now, not anytime soon for anyone. So we'll see how that all goes, and we'll keep an eye on it. Also, we're going to be speaking to Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor. Rachel Reeves is talking this morning in Derby, saying that despite the economy only growing by 0.7% in the first quarter of this year, actually, it's strong. She's the only person who believes that. The front page of the I newspaper this morning says that food and drink prices are set to rise. It's a blow to Starmer's cost of living plan. The Food and Drink Federation warns of inflationary effect of new workers' rights and a fizzy drink tax and the nanny state in general. Let's get a voice note from Darren on the cost of living.
Good morning, Mike. It's Darren here from Carmarthenshire. Hope you're well. Mike, I just wanted to announce, and you've got the exclusive story on this one. I'm delighted to announce, Mike, I've just secured a trade deal with Aldi's. So what I've decided with them is I'm going to be going there every Friday, Mike, doing my weekly shopping, and then in exchange for that, I will be handing over probably about £200 a week, and they're going to provide all my food, Mike. So I'm absolutely delighted to have secured this groundbreaking deal, Mike, inspired by our Lord and Saviour, Sir Keir Starmer. His international efforts in the last few weeks have inspired me to secure this groundbreaking deal, Mike, and I'm absolutely delighted to announce it exclusively on your show, Mike. Have a good day.
Very well done, Darren. Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Of course, you're obviously clearly a much better negotiator than Keir Starmer's trade negotiators, because if you'd had one of them doing that deal, they'd have had you getting all that food, you'd have been given all the money, but you'd also have had to house a couple of Aldi workers for every weekend that you bought the food from, because that's how bad the Labour government negotiators actually are. We'll be talking about the prisons crisis this morning, of course, as well. As Shabana Mahmood says, there's only one thing to do when you've got too many prisoners, is let them all out. Brilliant. Yeah, well, just turn the prisons into migrant hotels. Why don't you do that and just leave the prisoners to roam the streets for free? Of course, Albania's big in the news today as well. Keir Starmer's gone over there to see if he can get any good news, because he's definitely in need of some when it comes to immigration. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. A couple of weird stories that we'll get stuck into very shortly in this hour as well. Ed Miliband, of course, looks likely to lose his seat to Reform if there ever is an election anytime soon. Gary Lineker's finally apologised for his anti-Semitic post. However, he's unreservedly apologised, but he's still facing calls to be sacked. He's supposed to be, I think, doing the commentary for the FA Cup final this weekend. Let's see if the BBC suddenly finds himself a backbone. Also, we're going to be talking about David Lammy's weird taxi ride in the Alps. Nobody can explain that. Let's talk to Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor. Mel, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Very good to see you. According to Rachel Reeves, our economy is strong. I'll pause for a moment while you stop laughing, but carry on and tell us what the economy is actually doing.
Well, the economy is in a very fragile state, Mike. We have had some growth in these quarterly numbers, but of course the overall record is pretty dismal. I mean, you've got an economy where the budget that Rachel Reeves had back last autumn, she had some fiscal headroom against her fiscal targets. That's the kind of buffer you have against things going wrong. Well, she blew all of that and more. She then had this emergency budget where she's rebuilt some more fiscal headroom by taking some tough decisions. And now, where most people are saying that come the autumn and the budget, that fiscal headroom will probably have gone and we'll be into a round of further difficult things that this Chancellor's likely to have to do, including quite possibly increasing taxes yet again. So we're ending up in an ever-increasing cycle of increased taxes. We've got inflation higher than it would be had they not taken these choices of borrowing vast amounts of money, spending vast amounts of money, taxing businesses, and that being passed on by way of price rises. And that increase in inflation, Mike, that your last voice note, that rather wonderful voice note that just came through, I think was alluding to, is of course keeping interest rates up. And we've got such a large national debt now that the interest payment costs on that national debt are running at £100 billion a year under this government. That's twice what we spend on defence. That's not money going into making us stronger. It's money going down the drain on servicing costs for our debt. So overall, I'm afraid, she doesn't score very highly on the economy, whatever these latest numbers.
No. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, also, is it not rather parlous for us to have to say that 0.7% is not bad? I mean, that's what I'm seeing some commentators say this morning. I mean, I'm not saying it's not bad. I think it's dreadful because it's not really even, it's not even 1%. So the margin of error could be that it's down somewhere like 0.3, 0.4%. The idea that anybody thinks that's encouraging and better than expected is ludicrous, because if you look at all of the things that are happening, the increased, employment costs, the increased national insurance, the fizzy drink tax, all of the things that the nanny state seems to be wanting to do under Labour, is just making everything unaffordable. I just spoke to a lady down in Gloucestershire, whose daughter runs a fish and chip shop. The cost of the fish that she buys for 9 kilos from wherever she buys it from is going to rise from £98 to £148, a 50% increase. And that's the kind of increases in products that people are seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, take this figure, 0.7% increase quarter on quarter. If you look at the different months within that quarter, actually growth was much weaker in the third month than it was in the second, was running at about half the level of the second month. The national insurance increases that you're mentioning, and I'd also mention the huge increase in business rates that your fish and chip lady is probably facing too, and the employment legislation that's coming down the line from this government that's going to load up businesses with red tape and additional costs. None of that has been directly factored into these figures, because that is yet to come. That's happening now. That's outside the range that these figures relate to. And if you look at the overall picture, whether it's the IMF, the Bank of England, the Office of Budget Responsibility, they're all downgraded growth for this government. The OBR actually halving their forecast of growth for this year. And this is due to the decisions on tax and spending and the effect on inflation and interest rates and all of those things that are just killing businesses, Mike, like the people that are phoning into your programme.
Yeah, absolutely right. We hear it every single day, and people, can't spend as much money because they don't have it. They can't earn as much money, and so therefore that affects the amount of money going into the economy in general. I mean, one of the other big drivers, of course, of the economy is energy, and the cost of energy in this country, which is still higher than it is in any other part of the world, which seems extraordinary to me. Ed Miliband tweeted in the last hour that the Great British Energy Bill has been passed by Parliament, the first publicly owned energy company in over 70 years, a domestic clean power champion owned by the British people for the British people. I mean, it's not a publicly owned energy company, is it? It's a quango. What does it do?
Well, it is a quango that doesn't produce any energy.
Right.
And in fact, they've come forward with 29 new quangos since they've been in office. You know, football, governance, the energy, and all the rest of it. I mean, they're loading us up with this kind of additional burdens and bloated state and all the things we need to get a grip of if we're to get taxes down and make life easier for businesses so that they can generate the income and the wealth that will support the economy and society and make people better off. And we've been going in exactly the wrong direction, I'm afraid.
And I mean, what is the point of GB Energy exactly? Can you work it out? Because I can't.
No, not really. It's consuming billions of pounds. That's the thing that I focus on. Billions of pounds that, of course, are added to our debt. And my point earlier I'm making is that has to be paid for, and that's paid for by way of the interest on it, you know, the cost of the gilts that we have to issue to support that debt. And that is running at ruinous levels, Mike. You know, £100 billion a year just on debt interest is one of the reasons why we can't get one of the reasons why the government will say they can't get national insurance down or get business rates down, the things that will help the lady with her fish and chip shop. And I've been out, Mike, I've been visiting high streets, retailers, up down. I went down to Dorset the other day, I saw Beale's, which has been in existence as a department store for 140 years. Okay, it was the oldest department store in the country. It had its Rachel Reeves closing down sale. Literally all the posters in the window, picture of Rachel Reeves, you know, Rachel Reeves closing down sale. That's what this government is doing to our high streets and businesses. Yeah, it's absolutely shocking, isn't it? Let me play a little clip from yesterday's Prime Minister's questions, because, of course, immigration very much on the lips of everybody this week after Keir Starmer's, you know, Road to Damascus speech last Monday. This is, of course, a Plaid Cymru MP asking a question that an awful lot of people wanted to ask.
This Prime Minister once spoke of compassion and dignity for migrants and for defending free movement. Now he talks of islands of strangers and taking back control. Somebody here has to call this out, Mr. Speaker. It seems the only principle he consistently defends is whichever he last heard in a focus group. So I ask him, is there any belief he holds which survives a week in Downing Street?
Yes, the belief that she talks rubbish.
Now, that was Liz Saville-Roberts from Plaid Cymru, who I think she was asking a pretty genuine question that an awful lot of people would want the answer to. He was unconscionably rude to her there, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was, actually. I wasn't in the chamber because I was down meeting with some aerospace companies and talking about the future of that sector and what we want to do there, so I wasn't able to be there. But from that clip, yeah, it didn't sound like the best answer to me. And I think the point that Liz was making was a very fair point. That the Prime Minister has gone from a position where he's welcomed open borders and the single market and free movement, where he suggested that those that are concerned about net migration, that there's a racist element to having that perfectly reasonable and objective argument and set of discussions, and yet now has apparently in tone and rhetoric at least moved to a different position. But of course what he's proposing isn't going to solve the problem. I mean, when it comes to illegal migration, let's look at his record. We've had 12,000 illegal migrants coming across the Channel this year. That's more than 2024, more than it was in 23, more than 22. You know, it's a record number at this stage of the year coming across the English Channel. Labour are failing on this.
They really are. But he didn't even mention illegal migrants. He's in Albania today to form some form of, you know, third country hub. Well, he could have had a third country hub when he got into power, and that was in Rwanda.
Yeah, exactly. One of the most extraordinary things he did, and on ideological grounds, I believe, was when he came into office and he scrapped Rwanda. We had planes ready to go at the end of July. We were already seeing the deterrent effect of that policy in that a number of illegal migrants in Northern Ireland, within our jurisdiction, promptly left the UK across the border into the Republic of Ireland because they were worried about this deterrent. We saw a complete slowdown of the number of boats coming across the Channel because they were waiting for Keir Starmer to scrap Rwanda before they came over. And we also brought in the returns deal with Rwanda, which led to a 93% drop almost overnight in the number of Albanians coming to our country illegally. We know deterrence works. But what this government is doing when it's over in Albania is talk about something completely different, which is the processing of those that have gone through the asylum process, rather than being promptly removed on arrival in our country if you've come here illegally, which was what Rwanda was all about. The government made a terrible mistake in scrapping that and wasted a huge amount of money that we had spent in setting the scheme up.
Exactly right. And finally, I must ask you about this story about David Lammy. I don't know if you've seen it. It's all over the papers today. It was around sort of late yesterday afternoon. He seems to have got into a bit of bother while taking a 360-mile cab journey from Italy to the Swiss Alps. We're not quite sure why he did it, but he's having a row with the cab driver. The cab driver drives off with his stuff. He's claiming that he didn't owe the money that the cab driver said he owed. I mean, it's all a bit weird. The driver's now been arrested by the police and been charged with somehow disappearing off with all of Lammy's luggage, which included some rather important diplomatic papers, we are told. I mean, what's he doing taking a taxi for 6 hours from an official visit that he's making with the King to somewhere private?
So I don't know the full details of that, Mike, and I believe the facts are kind of disputed as between the driver and between David Lammy. So I think it's probably safest on that one for all of us just to wait to see what finally transpires and what the facts. Well, no. Mel. To be fair, you know, in answer to your question, Mike, should he be? Is it right that after an official engagement he then makes a private journey? Then clearly he's entitled to do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But you know, where is the truth? I don't know. Was it that this driver, as is alleged, actually even showed a knife to David Lammy at one point when he was asking for an increase in what David Lammy says was an increase in the fare? But I just don't know the facts. I wasn't there. So
well, all I'm going to say is
I do think it's a little bit difficult.
Yeah, but it's weird. I mean, you can see that it's a bit odd, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, I've been in this game a long time, and whenever I see a story that involves somebody high profile, like a politician, particularly a minister of the Crown, getting involved in strange rows in odd countries with sort of certain circumstances being disputed, it's all a bit weird, and I think more of this will come out. And I just don't, as the Foreign Secretary of this land, I don't think he should be leaving himself open to those kind of situations, even from the security point of view.
Yeah, so I don't know what his security arrangements may or may not have been, and I just don't know the circumstances. But look, it's certainly a very, very unusual story. Let's say that much, and let's see what facts emerge in time. I'll come back on when we reach that point, and we'll discuss it. There we are.
Well, I'll go with it's an unusual story. That'll do for me. Thank you very much indeed. Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor there, talking about the economy and much else besides. Rachel Reeves says it's strong. Yeah, strong like ox. No, it's not strong at all. It is actually weak. Let's get a voice note from Flick on Starmer.
Morning, Mike. Flick from Tolson Darcy in Essex. I wonder, is Two-Tier taking a good chicken nugget recipe with him to Albania? It'd be very useful if he did. Great show. Cheers. Bye.
Well, he doesn't eat chicken nuggets because he's a vegetarian, isn't he? Even though he's not even sure about that. He's not sure when he was a vegetarian or when he started being a vegetarian. It's all very strange. By the way, we still haven't heard anything about the guy who's been arrested for firebombing his house, have we? They've got an extension on questioning the guy. We still don't know his nationality. When are we going to find anything out about this story? Have they put some kind of suppression on it? Do they not want us to find out who it was? Are they trying to keep it secret? You'll never be able to do that. How did that noise come from? Don't think it's my phone, is it? No, it's not me. 9:20.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, as a member of parliament, you are gifted loads of things. You are genuinely told that there are certain things that you're able to keep, and you don't have to declare it if it's worth less than £300. I think about £300. So what's interesting is that it does really reveal the absolute lavish nature of a lot of what these members of parliament get. And I think what we have to be very clear about is any member of parliament that claims that they are hard done by, that the £80,000 or £90,000 now that members of parliament get as a salary, that's not all the benefits that they receive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is...
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 23 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham. Here's one from Stuart. I expect the Albanians, the EU, etc., cannot wait for Starmer and his Muppets who have never done any deals or been in business to start negotiating, because our lot do not have a clue. And one from Sharon who says, Mike, this idea of allowing younger people freedom of movement within the UK and the EU is surely age discrimination. How can this be allowed? Well, it's a good point. And what if you identify as a 20-year-old, right, and just go, I'd like some freedom of movement, please? Let's get a voice note from Mark.
It's Mark in Lancashire. Just having a listen to your excellent conversation with Peter Hitchens about the lack of trust in politicians. And I'll tell you what, for me, it's not just politicians either. We no longer trust the police because they're locking us up for things that we say on Facebook and Twitter. We no longer trust the banks. They won't give us our money when we go in. You want to buy a motorbike for your son for £3,000. They put you through the ringer. They want to know what you want the money for and all this. They're debanking people for the political views. We don't trust politicians. We don't trust the police. We don't trust the banks. Who can you trust? It's a very dangerous time. And for me, it all started with Theresa May, the politicians thing. She was absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. Tried to stitch us up with the EU. She didn't do what she said she'd do when she was Home Secretary under David Cameron. The rot started with her, and then it's just got worse and worse and worse, and now we don't trust any of them.
Yeah, Mark, I think you're absolutely right, and that is a massive problem. It's an existential problem for the political system in this country. A lot of people would say you don't trust the NHS anymore either. And that's what we're going to talk about now. Stephanie Davis-Arise here, founder and director of Transgender Trend. The front page of the Daily Telegraph this morning has this story. NHS offers treatment to trans toddlers. Believe it or not, the NHS is treating nursery-age children who believe they are transgender after watering down its own guidance. And this, of course, would be in the wake of the Supreme Court decision just a couple of weeks ago in which it was decided that a woman can only be a woman if she is actually born biologically a woman, and that a trans woman is not a woman, i.e. a trans woman is a man. Now, why on earth you would get toddlers involved in this, I have no idea. Stephanie, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. I mean, the NHS seems to be going a bit rogue on this whole story here, because we're hearing from them that not only are they willing to protect the rights of trans women in their efforts to use, you know, women-only spaces, whether they be toilets or whether they be changing rooms for staff, it now appears that they're sort of dicing with breaking the law, are they not, on this story?
Well, I don't think this is really related to the Supreme Court. This is more about the NHS policy. I mean, let's face it, the NHS are totally captured, but so is the National Education Union. Yeah. And when you're talking about 5-year-olds, what we really have to look at is schools. Even in nurseries now, children are being taught that they can be either girls or boys, depending on how they identify. There's total indoctrination of children from the earliest age, and until that is stopped, we're going to continue getting 5-year-olds thinking that they're transgender. And the situation for parents is really difficult. They've been given this information as well. Parents are encouraged to feel worried about their children now when the child's exhibiting perfectly normal behaviours. And so they might take their child to the local CAMS service. But the problem is that because all of the therapists and clinicians have also been trained to just affirm a child who says that they're the opposite sex, clinicians are still referring children direct to the gender clinics if they don't feel confident in being able to treat them, or they're just affirming them. So it's going to take a long time to unpick and actually get out of the NHS root and branch this gender affirmation policy that brought down the Tavistock and was found to be a risk to children, because it's still happening throughout every area of the NHS.
Yes, indeed. And I mean, one of the paragraphs of this story suggests that the consultation process is going on with NHS England. I was under the impression that the government had disbanded NHS England, but apparently it's still there. Well, yes, I'm not sure what's happening with NHS England, but it's when you look at the regional NHS trusts that there's, some of them are still Stonewall diversity champions. We hear of the local CAMS services displaying progress flags, trans flags. Children are being so thoroughly indoctrinated from every angle when they're in school, when they go to the clinic, that they might have been born in the wrong body. And so at the moment, I think because the gender clinics are supposed to be operating a new approach, which is more based on psychotherapy rather than affirmation and medical transition, that probably it's the safest place for children to go. Now, I don't agree that any child should be going to a gender clinic. I don't think any treatment on the NHS should be based on ideology. But the unfortunate situation is that probably the better qualified clinicians will be at the gender hubs. But still, it's an area that clinicians don't want to work in because it's so highly politicised. I think a lot of therapists are frightened of working with these children altogether. And if Labour does go ahead and bring in a conversion therapy bill that will criminalise anything other than affirming a boy as a girl or a girl as a boy, it'll make that, it'll have a real chilling effect and make that situation much, much worse. But the NHS did say they were going to provide training for the clinicians and therapists outside of the gender hubs so that children could go to local services and have mental health issues addressed. So issues like eating disorders or autism or trauma, those sorts of issues, any ordinary therapist can deal with. And once you get that system in place, then you'll see the waiting lists go down, because many of these children, once treated properly for mental health issues, will not need to go on to a gender clinic. No, quite. And of course, the Department for Health is saying that they're working with regard to the CAS review, keeping their kind of changes to whatever it is that they do in line with the CAS review. But it doesn't sound exactly like that, does it?
Well, one would hope that at the new gender hubs, then the clinicians are recruited who are fully committed to implementing the approach of CAS. The problem is, all the NHS is so captured with this gender identity ideology that it's difficult to find those clinicians. And a lot of clinicians are still afraid to work in this area for fear of being accused of conversion therapy, for fear of losing their jobs if they say anything wrong, because this area is so highly politicised. So it is difficult to recruit the right people for these jobs who are not ideologically captured already themselves. So, it's going to take some time to ensure that these services are really following CAS's recommendations, and that that the old gender affirmative approach won't creep back in, or through some clinicians who are working at the new hubs.
Yes, and from what I've gathered as well, as I said, it seems likely that the NHS as an organisation is very much more sympathetic to, and I know you're saying it's not that connected to the Supreme Court ruling, but kind of is, because it's still about the perception of what a woman is in a sense, and if the NHS is not willing to adhere to that rule and that law, then there's a problem.
Yeah, and the NHS have been like this for a long time. You know, they don't even collect data on sex. They're collecting data on gender identity. There's this nebulous, non-scientific concept that you have some sort of gendered soul.
Yeah.
So the NHS, there are all sorts of problems, and it's root and branch. It goes right through the NHS, and until that's dealt with, these kids are still subject to, you know, you go into a local hospital and there'll be trans and pride flags and all of the information. It will take a long time for the gender hubs to be operating in a truly neutral environment, because at the moment the NHS is not neutral. Everywhere you go, you see that they are completely enthralled to this ideology.
Yeah.
But at the moment, you know, the problem is with these kids, and they're very, very young ones, they're on a waiting list. They've been referred. They're getting no help in the meantime with any of the real problems that might be going on. And also the focus remains on gender for the child and for the family. They're waiting for the gender clinic. The subject is gender, and as Cass said, when the focus is on gender, you miss all the other underlying issues, and you end up with what she called diagnostic overshadowing, which is you're trying to treat a problem when actually there's another problem that's causing the presentation of being trans.
Right. Yeah, it's a complicated story, isn't it? Stephanie Davis-Arai, founder and director of Transgender Trend. Thank you very much indeed. Absolutely crazy what's going on inside the NHS, but they don't seem to want to let it go. That's the problem. Let's get a voice note. Here's Malcolm on Lindsay Hoyle.
Good morning, Mike. It's Malcolm from Oxford. Fantastic show yet again. However, why does Lindsay Hoyle have to put Nigel Farage down every time? Oh, it's not my speech. It's the Prime Minister's. Lindsay Hoyle, you're an idiot. Cheers, Mike. Bye.
It's worse than that. He's a pompous idiot, which makes it even more annoying. And he costs us an awful lot of money with all of his trips abroad, it has to be said. Let's have a look at what he said to Nigel Farage. He was talking yesterday at Prime Minister's Questions about border security.
We at Reform, a party that is alive and kicking, very much enjoyed your speech on Monday. You seem to be learning a very great deal from us. But can I encourage you, please, to go further as a matter of national security? As a matter of national security. Over the weekend, an illegal immigrant from Iran, who we believe came by boat, was arrested in the north of England on serious charges of terrorism. Since the speech on Monday, 1,000 young, undocumented young males have crossed the English Channel. Does the Prime Minister agree? Now is the time to declare the situation in the English Channel as a national security emergency.
It wasn't my speech, it was the Prime Minister's.
Mr. Speaker, the situation is serious. The last government lost control of the borders. We are taking powers. The Borders Bill, precisely to his point, the Borders Bill is the first bill to give terrorism-like powers to law enforcement, precisely so that we can get in before the crimes are committed, before people get to this country. That's why this is the most far-reaching provision ever for law enforcement to defend and secure our borders. And that's why it is extraordinary that he, of all people, voted against it. And sooner or later he's going to have exposure.
Yeah, I mean, Starmer just doesn't get it, does he? And how about this, right? The Home Office this very morning have put this out. The current immigration system is broken. Now is the time for action. Who's in charge of it? Oh, the Home Office. Well, it's broken because the Home Office have broken it. We have a plan to create an immigration system that works for the whole of the UK. And guess what? This is what they say. Raising the skills threshold for work visas. OK. Ending our reliance on the overseas labour market. Well, they've just announced that they're going to do a deal with the European Union to bring in people under the age of 40 on some kind of youth transient scheme so that they can work in the United Kingdom. How is that ending our reliance on the overseas labour market? It's not. They say introducing a contribution-based model for settlement and citizenship. Well, that's not going to work. And speeding up the deportation of foreign national offenders. Well, he's not doing that either. Dave's in London, wants to talk about Starmer. Dave, very good morning to you, sir. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Mike, how are you?
Yeah,
Hi,
good.
Mike, you
Yeah.
right?
What do you want to say?
Yeah, I think that this asylum seeker thing that's going on over in Albania, wherever it is.
Yeah.
I think the issue is what he's saying is this is for failed asylum seekers.
Yeah.
And we all know that in the UK we don't fail anybody.
There's very few. Very few.
Applying for asylum. So he knows he's only got to go over there and say, could you take about 50 or 60? Because that's all we're going to actually fail.
Yes.
And that's not our issue, right? Our issue is you land on the shores, you come here on a boat, you go.
Yeah.
You don't apply for asylum, end of story. And that's what Denmark and all them are doing. So,
well, it's a bit like what Australia did. You know, if you land on this the country's shores illegally, you will never be allowed to apply for asylum. And then they won't come.
Correct. And you take away all the other things that we give them. We've got to start listening to what Denmark are doing, because Denmark seem to be down to like 400 migrants a year now or something. And but this failed asylum seeker thing is more smoke and mirrors. He knows his party doesn't want to stop migration, so he's actually kind of caught. He's done. He's toast.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I've been saying it for a while, and I think you're right. Dave, very well said. And when, as Peter Hitchens said, this level of distrust amongst the people, the level of lying that Keir Starmer has reached now with his ridiculous speech on immigration, because he doesn't believe a word of it, he has wrecked his own reputation. What little of it was left. He doesn't have any more now cards to play. He literally is all out of everything. Even if he tries to pull any lever that he can pull to try and get himself back into the popularity of ordinary working people in this country, he's blown it, because nobody will believe a word Keir Starmer says from this point on. It's 9:38.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:39. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until just 10 o'clock, just about 20 minutes away, and Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. Vincent in North Yorkshire might laugh out loud stuff this morning. Transgender 4-year-olds, who are these pathetic parents who would take their kids to be examined by these lunatic therapists? Laugh at this rubbish or you will go mad. Absolutely right. Trans toddlers, for heaven's sake, says Amanda, how can this appalling state of affairs be allowed to continue? The authorities should be arresting the people involved in this gross practice. Now, on the subject of David Lammy's weird taxi trip, Chris says, I don't give a damn what happened to Lammy on his private taxi trip, but I do give a damn if he puts it on his expense account. And one from Sheila in Calne says, where was Lammy's security? I thought foreign secretaries had 24-hour protection. And Tony from Barron Furness, Mike, what was Lammy's wife doing with him if he was working? She could have met him at the ski resort. Well, she could have rented a car. She could have done a lot of things. Let's talk to a man that knows a thing or two about travelling in unusual ways. Simon Calder, travel correspondent for The Independent. He's in Glasgow. He's waiting for a brand new British transatlantic airline to go. I don't know if you're going to New York or which other destination, Simon. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Yep, I've just picked up my boarding pass to go to New York JFK aboard a Airbus A380 Super Jumbo, one of those double-deck planes.
Oh, nice.
This one's 12 years old. It's seen service with China Southern, and it's, parked outside, actually. They're just moving it across the apron, ready for this first transatlantic flight. Now, it's not quite as everyone imagined. We were promised that by 2025 there would be, I think, 100 aircraft in the fleet with 75 destinations. So far, there's one aircraft, but it's not actually operated by Global Airlines. It's being flown by the Maltese subsidiary of a Portuguese airline called Highfly, and the only way you can buy tickets is through a travel agency opposite the station in Slough. So it's not quite the kind of glamour that everyone perhaps was expecting, but the founder of Global Airlines, a chap called James Asquith, claims that this is going to bring back the golden age of flying. Well, I mean, I'll tell you what, here I am at the check-in desk. It closes in an hour and a quarter, and it took me kind of 5 seconds. There's only 170 people on board this flight,
right.
Which it could hold 3 times as many as that. And I paid more for me, 780 quid for it. They then dropped the fare by £400. There's quite a lot of sort of media types and so on here. So I don't think they're going to be making a fortune from it, Mike.
Well, I hope you've secured a spot in the upper deck, Simon, is all I can suggest.
Well, this is one of those planes where the economy seats are on the upper deck as well. So I'm in seat 52F.
That sounds a long way back.
Which, well, down the back by the loo is my normal position, as you know.
Yeah, the old smoking seats. That's it. But why is this? I mean, it's, first of all, Global. What a terrible name for anything. Other than why would you call an airline after it? But is this guy serious about this? He's got one plane. I mean, that means you can't even run a daily service, can you?
Oh no! I mean, this is if you're listening or watching in Glasgow, and you think, thank goodness we've got transatlantic flights back. Well, you haven't. There's this one, and there's one coming back, which I should be on Monday, and then next Wednesday there's a flight from Manchester to New York, and then that's it. So lots of people have been comparing this with Richard Branson back in 1984 when he started Virgin Atlantic with a second-hand plane, just one of them. But that was very different. He was offering daily services. You could go for a day or for a month or just go one way, whereas this one, it's a charter flight, as I say, bought through an office in Slough, and it's not quite the kind of frequent service that travellers are demanding. Personally, though, Mike, this is costing somebody, I'm not sure who, tens of millions of pounds. And if they want effectively to subsidise flyers, well, that's fine with me. I wish them well, but I don't think they will be around in 40 years' time as Atlantic. Oh, and here it is.
No.
Here he is. This is James Asquith. Mike here is he is the chief executive and founder. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I think a lot of positivity since you didn't believe this would happen. So here we are. Are you enjoying being on board?
I most certainly am. I've already checked in. It's all very good. Nice and calm and quiet.
Did you get a cupcake?
I didn't get a cupcake, James, but thank you.
Do you want a cupcake, Simon?
No, it's fine. I just want to know what happens next after this. I'm just talking to Mike Graham on Talk, and we want to know. You're flying from here to New York. You're flying from Manchester to New York. What happens after that?
Who knows? What happens tomorrow? Who knows? We'll see. Look, everyone said we wouldn't get this far, right? Including yourself. So let's see. I think we've been pretty open and transparent with the journey, the difficulties, the problems, the challenges. So sometimes now we'll see what happens next. Maybe we'll turn the aircraft into a spa next.
A spa, that would be good. And Mike Graham would be among your first customers, I should
But what do you think? What do you think about where we are?
I wish you well. I was just saying to that nice Mike Graham how I hope it's a huge success because we need competition. We need the aviation industry shaking up. I just hope that it all works out.
Well, who knows? Nothing's guaranteed tomorrow, right? Yeah. So we'll have to see. But
he's not giving me a lot of. I'm sorry, he's not encouraging me to get on his plane.
Couldn't be happier. Nothing else happens. We'll see from here. Okay, thanks a lot.
See you later.
Thanks,
see you on board.
Yeah.
There we are.
If I were you, Simon, I mean, nothing personal. If I were you, I wouldn't get on that plane. He doesn't sound like the sort of guy that should be running an airline. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I mean, what the hell's he talking about?
Well, Mike, yeah.
Don't go. Listen, seriously, don't go.
It's a very professionally run operation. The team at High Fly know exactly what they're doing. And look, this is unbelievable.
Hang on, it's a second-hand plane, right? It's a second-hand plane.
One careful owner, China Southern.
One careful owner from China. You've been given a free cupcake so far for 700 quid. And you might be coming back, but you're not sure.
Oh, no, it'll all be fine. It will, Mike. Look, aviation has never been safer. High Fly, very good operation. The plane was very well looked after by China Southern, and it meets all the
Listen, you've got an hour to go, right, until you get on it.
Yeah.
Why don't you go and buy yourself a parachute? Just in case.
That won't be necessary. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, let me ask you one more question before I let you go. Because you've travelled around the world in a variety of different methods and means. David Lammy took a 6-hour taxi ride from a place called Forlì in Italy to a place called Flan in the Swiss Alps. I don't know if you've ever taken that particular journey. 360 miles. It seems to cost about 1,500 quid. Nobody's quite sure what he was doing. Have you ever taken a long taxi ride like that?
I have done, but in Uzbekistan, where that length of journey costs $50 cash only, that's about £40.
Yes.
I was quite surprised with it. There's plenty of really good night trains. So you could have just nipped along to Bologna and got a night train through the Alps. It would have been a dream with Mrs. Lammy as well. Would have cost a quarter as much, and we'd be much happier today. Wouldn't we? And that's what we got to do. Be happy.
Be happy.
Don't
yes.
worry.
Listen, I hope. Be happy. Don't worry. Don't worry. Be happy. Have a good time on your trip to New York. Give my regards to Broadway and all the rest of it. And hopefully we'll see you when you get back.
Okay, I look forward to it, Mike. Maybe talk to you on Monday morning. I'm going to be at the airport.
Yeah, I'd love to know what the in-flight entertainment's like. Maybe it's just your guy that Asquith.
No, I think they'll probably be running wall-to-wall talkTV. We'll see.
Let's hope so. Maybe it's a franchise operation for me there. Thank you very much indeed. Simon Calder, travel correspondent with The Independent in Glasgow, with a very strange character who seems to be running an airline now, who says, hope for the best. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's not really a great slogan, is it? You know, let's see what happens, you know. Global Airlines. Let's see what happens at 9:48.
I think the whole conversation has changed. You know, some of us have got scars on our backs from fighting for this stuff for years and years, years in which it was not just unfashionable, but completely taboo to be aggressively questioning and challenging the scale of uncontrolled immigration. You know, those of us that have been at the forefront of this political debate have been called every name under the sun, and that's fine. We're used to it. You stick your neck out, you've got to be ready.
Across the UK, on on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 9:51. And of course, we'll be here until 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here in about 6 or 7 minutes or so to come in and tell us what's coming up on her show. She'll be covering, no doubt, of course, with what is going on in Albania. Harry Cole's out there for the Sun. Keir Starmer's out there for the government, supposedly. Here's one from Terry in Birmingham, who says, "Morning, Mike. Miliband sings Blowing in the Wind with his ukulele. With his idea of raiding your wages to create a heat pump fund, shouldn't he sing Fagan's You Got to Pick a Pocket or Two? Great show, keep it up." Well, we had the news this morning from Ed Miliband that Great British Energy is now a going concern. Great news for Jürgen, who's been waiting for something to do for a while. But according to Miliband, the climate bill, the GB Energy bill, has just been passed. So GB Energy is now an up and running, wholly owned subsidiary of the government. Except it's not. It's a quango. Let's get a voice note from Naomi.
Hi, Mike. Naomi from Lancashire. Great show, as always. Just thinking, never mind those bumper stickers. I'd quite like a pair of those Keir Starmer flip-flops. Have a good one.
Yeah, Keir Starmer's flip-flops, you know, they could market those, couldn't they? I think the Tory party did that for a while. Now you'd have to get even bigger orders for them. Sean says, what's this under-40s for the so-called youth mobility scheme? It was under-30s until today, for heaven's sake, says Sean in Bridlington. And Tim says the same. Since when have youths been up to 40 years old? This is just opened borders by another name. Well, of course, we had Harry Cole, who was out in Albania earlier on, talking to us. But just before we have a listen to what he said, here's Keir Starmer, who's now there as well.
It is totally unacceptable that anybody is getting on a small boat and crossing the channel to the United Kingdom. The last government lost control of the borders. I'm determined that we'll retake control of the borders. That means that we've got to have a concerted effort to smash the gangs that are running this vile trade. We've carried out in the last few months many high-profile arrests across different parts of the world, working with partners like Iraq that haven't been possible in the past, seized a lot of assets, had returns agreement, maximum number of returns. But what we've done in our joint work with Albania is shown that by working with other countries, and this morning you saw law enforcement from Albania alongside law enforcement in the UK, we've driven down those numbers. I want to see more of that because I'm absolutely determined that we're going to clear up the mess that we've been left and make sure that we get the control that we need of our borders.
Yes, a control that we need of our borders. Well, you know, there's no sign of it happening anytime soon, is there? Let's find out what Harry Cole had to say a little bit earlier from The Sun.
Everyone's looking at Italy and seeing how it's going, whether it works and whether there is potential there. It might not just be Albania, it might be slightly wider, the region. But it's certainly something the government are looking at, but it's very much looking at it in the view that it has to be legally watertight or Keir Starmer won't touch it.
I was hoping he might have started with removing some of those Albanian criminals in our prison system. Now that we've got a prison crisis going on apparently as well, and they're letting loads of people out, he could have taken a load of Albanian prisoners with him, couldn't he?
Yeah, so the Albanian prisoners and criminals are, a significant number of them in UK jails. A lot of them have been sent back. They did strike a deal with Albania. The last government, Rishi Sunak had. So 95% of the Albanians who crossed over do get sent back automatically now because essentially they have a deal that if you are Albanian and you land in Britain, you try to claim asylum or you try to come here, you just get sent back to Albania immediately, which is a very effective deterrent. And actually numbers of Albanians crossing illegally into the UK is actually significantly down. Yeah. So more of that would be good, but it's a very tricky situation. Obviously, he's here. Prime Minister's here as the first British Premier to ever visit Albania, actually, and he's having chats and talks today with the Albanians. And tomorrow, the wider European community, this thing called the EPC, which Macron set up, and actually Liz Truss signed us up to in one of the brief moments of her premiership, which is the EU plus. It's the EU plus sort of people in the EU's orbit, like the UK, like Albania, like other Balkans countries. So I think migration's on the agenda for that as well. So I suspect today they'll be teeing up what they want to discuss, and then obviously the Europeans are coming to London on Monday. So for all the illegal migration chit chat that they're having here the back end of this week. Next week, they're back onto legal migration because before the EU will sign anything up, like a defence deal or relaxing trade on goods, they're going to insist that Starmer agrees to take tens of thousands of younger Europeans, under 40s, like myself, Mike.
Not for long.
Under 40s who would be essentially returned for free movement to allow them to work and study in Europe. Brits would be able to go to Europe, but as we found out, when we were members of the European Union, it's much more of a one-way street if people wanted to come here. And as we found out, 6 million Europeans settled, and they only realised that 3 were there. So when they start talking about small limited numbers and things, red flags should be waved.
One final question from Kev, who's asked me to ask you this: has Harry tried the chicken nuggets yet? He says.
I haven't tried the chicken nuggets, but I will report back whether they are sufficient for criminals' children to eat.
And that, of course, is a reference to the deportation scandal when we do Migrant of the Day. That was one of the more famous ones, of an Albanian man who could not be deported from this country because he thinks his son won't like the chicken nuggets that are sold in Albania compared to the ones that are sold here in the UK. But Keir Starmer, obviously in Albania, looking for a third country to use to send some people to when he says he's going to control the borders. Do you really believe it? A couple of final tweets for you. Richard in Leicester says this: Mike, the 0.7% growth is probably down to the vast amounts spent on hotels, etc., on illegal immigrants, money most likely borrowed, adding to our national debt. I think that's a good point. There is a lot of money being spent by the public sector, an awful lot of money being spent by the government, and the business of migrants and illegal migrants is booming. The one place you want to be if you want to make money is in the hotel business or the property business. But the other problem for Keir Starmer this morning, of course, unusually from the Daily Star front page, Gypsy King Paddy Doherty is warning Universal Studios developers they've got a fight on their hands because there's a travellers camp which is apparently settled either very near to or actually on the part of land that they want to use for the Universal theme park. So I've got this: can't wait to see Seamus Gypsy King take on Mickey the Squeak Mouse at the fun park. Sign me up on that hot ticket, says Robbie in Herefordshire. Very good morning, Julie Hartley-Brewer's here.
I love these stories. I never understood this. It's like, do you own the land? No.
No.
Well then, do you have planning permission to... No.
No.
Okay, then for everyone else the rules are really clear.
Yeah.
Police should remove you that day.
Yes.
I don't understand what's complicated.
Well, travellers are quite good at remaining where they want to be, aren't
Well,
they?
I know police are pretty bad at, and local councils are actually doing... But anyway.
But anyway, I just think it's quite...
I mean, so much about... Do you know what I find fascinating? I'm going to be talking a lot about prisons being a breaking point, this announcement. Emergency announcement from the Justice Secretary of State. It's on a lot of the front pages.
Yes.
Barely even a mention of the BBC. I was looking for it, I couldn't find it on the BBC
Really?
website. I'm sure it's there somewhere.
Yeah.
But I went through I went through the UK, England, domestic news. I mean, it's not on the front.
Plenty on
where
Gaza,
is it?
though.
Plenty on Gaza. Always plenty on Gaza. But it's fascinating. It's like, the thing is, everyone at the BBC, they don't really think that people should be in prison at all.
No.
That's what it is.
Well, I mean, Labour have come up
Let
with a
them all
great
out.
scheme.